All right, everyone, welcome. This meeting of the Distance Education Advisory Board of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is now open. I would like to recognize that one of our long-term colleagues, James Andrews, has retired from Texas State, and so we will miss his smiling face in the future. He'll still be around the scene somewhere. And if you know James, he's basically irrepressible, so I'm sure we'll hear his voice at some point. I do want to thank him for his service on the DEAC over the years. It's been a very consistent contributor to our activities. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion regarding the minutes of the last meeting. If you need a couple minutes to read those over, let me know. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second? Are there any comments about the minutes, any corrections that need to be noted? Hearing none, I'll ask all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes are approved. Van, staff report on coordinating board activities.
A couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you've put the money in your magic envelope for lunch, please pass it to either end so that Cindy can grab it very easily. Also, just to remind you that we are being webcast as always, so don't say anything that you don't want to get out on YouTube. There have been a few things that have happened since the last meeting, especially in terms of legislative action, that I want to make you guys aware of, and that may also elicit some discussion before we move into looking at the two doctoral proposals. When we last met, I told you about a few pieces of legislation that would be of interest to this committee. I'll let you know where we are with that. HB 3025, which is the piece of legislation that deals with transfer of students and required degree plans, as well as core curriculum, has been passed out of the House and is now scheduled to be heard in Senate Higher Education. HB 2910, which is a degree completion bill that would instruct the coordinating board to work with any entities that have knowledge in degree completion initiatives, but does not provide funding for that, has also been passed out of the House and has been assigned to Senate Higher Ed. HB 991, which is the Community College Baccalaureate bill dealing with fire science, has not left the House Higher Education Committee, so it appears that it is probably dead now unless it is tacked on to something on the Senate side as an amendment. Same thing for HB 1508, which was also a Community College Baccalaureate bill, this dealing with Bachelor of Science of Nursing. That also never made it out of House Higher Education, so it is most likely dead now unless it comes back and is added in on the Senate or House side as an amendment. On the Senate side, SB 945, which is a reverse articulation bill, has passed out of the Senate and has now been assigned to House Higher Education. And SB 1534, which I didn't talk to you about last time, but is of interest this time, has been passed out of the Senate, and it has also been passed out of the House Committee. I want to tell you a little bit about 1534, and that's going to tie into our discussion later this afternoon when I give you an update on some of the things that are going on with the federal distance education regulations. But what Senate Bill 1534 does is it redefines how a career school or college is defined, because external, out-of-state higher education, regardless of whether it was a career school or college, has always been sort of lumped together in our regulations and in the Texas Workforce Commission regulations. Because institutions come to us for the authority to offer degrees, but they actually have to go to the Texas Workforce Commission for the authority to operate in the state. Texas is a little different in that regards, in that it's a two-tier process. We have always sort of treated all of these programs basically the same. What SB 1534 does is it would remove public and private colleges and universities from basically TWC's oversight. It exempts them. And I'll read you the definition just so that you have it in the back of your head for later on. Career school or college would be redefined as any business enterprise operated for a profit or on a nonprofit basis that maintains a physical place of business within this state or solicits business within this state that is not specifically exempted by this chapter, and that offers or maintains a course of study or courses of instruction or study, or at which place of business such a course or courses of instruction or study are available through classroom instruction or by distance education. And then here's the part that it adds, and does not include a school or educational institution that is physically located in another state, is legally authorized by the state of its physical location to offer post-secondary education and award degrees, is accredited by a national accrediting organization recognized by the United States Secretary of Education, and offers in this state only post-secondary distance or correspondence programs of instruction. So all of that is to say that we have legislation pending in our legislature that would exempt out-of-state public and private and proprietary institutions that have no physical presence in Texas and are only offering distance education and are accredited by someone that we recognize. That doesn't help you very much, unfortunately, unless there are other states doing something similar, and there are.
Other states to just copy this and solve the problem?
We're trying. But I did want to let you know that it looks like we're at least taking some legislative action in terms of what the Department of Ed regulations are requiring folks. And later today, I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the discussions that are going on at SREB that probably will be beneficial for you guys. But I wanted to let you know where we were legislatively right now.
Can you clarify that for me? The bill, or legislatively, we're saying if you are only distance ed,
Correct.
You're exempt.
Correct.
But all of us have no relationship to that.
Unfortunately.
We're on the receiving end of this.
Right. Okay.
It'll be up to other states to pass similar legislation.
So if they pass similar legislation, I still don't get how that helps us.
If other states were to pass similar legislation, let's say, for example, Kansas. If Kansas was to pass similar legislation, then if you were just offering distance education in Kansas and there's no physical presence, you would be exempt from having to get Kansas authority for those distance education
Even if
programs.
I'm a regular old university here.
Correct.
Okay, I get it. Some days I'm really blind.
No, it's not necessarily common sense.
That part.
We've fallen into federal land.
Van, I had a follow-up question on that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an exemption from both TWC and coordinating board review?
Yes.
Because I know there was another bill out there that had some hefty application fees and so on. It was House Bill
That one appears to be
3360.
dead right now.
Good, thank you.
No, this one actually would be TWC and us. So the other bill appears to not be going anywhere right now. And there are other states I know that are beginning to look at similar legislation that, if it's passed by them, would be of assistance to you guys. So, a couple of other initiatives.
Why can't the United States Congress just do this?
Because it's a state's issue.
Or at least that's their line, and they're sticking to
Federals are
it.
the ones
Yeah, right.
requiring it of us.
Doesn't stop them from doing other things that should be.
You're right.
A couple of other items here at the coordinating board, initiatives that you have maybe seen in the news, and I want to make sure that you're aware of. The statewide degree completion campaign has been rebranded. We were calling it Success by Degree. Now it is Grad Texas. And we even have a nice little logo and tagline that I'm very proud of. We are working with 8 institutions: University of North Texas System, Texas Tech, Lamar, UT Brownsville, Texas A&M Commerce, UH Downtown, and UH Clear Lake and Midwestern State University. We have the beginnings of a website. All of those institutions have started transmitting course catalogs and equivalency data over to Academy One to drop into their system. Milkshake Media is working on the internet architecture and the user interface for the website, and we plan on seeing that launched on July 8th. And with it will be the launching of the website as well as launching a statewide media campaign. We are hoping that we will be in the position of requesting more funds through the College Access Challenge grant for next year to continue doing marketing, and to also, if the launch goes well, to expand the number of institutions that are participating in the website. So that may be something that you see a little bit about. The Chronicle of Higher Ed interviewed us last week about it. It's beginning to get a little bit of national attention, so it's something that you may hear about. The other initiative that you probably have heard about, because it got a lot of national attention, was the $10,000 bachelor's degree. During the last board meeting last month, this was the item for the policy discussion. We had a great deal of discussion about what that type of a degree might look like, the sort of components that could be used, and many of those are components that institutions are already using. A lot of that discussion was about better leveraging 2+2 articulation programs with community colleges and universities, as well as talking about competency-based instruction, using open source materials that have been vetted by faculty in lieu of textbooks, and also talking about scalability and economies of scale with distance education, online instruction. The Chronicle of Higher Ed picked that up, Inside Higher Ed picked that up, Texas Tribune picked that up, and I lost track of the statewide newspapers that picked it up. It elicited a great deal of discussion, both at the board meeting and also out in the rest of the nation. That discussion seems to have died down a little bit right now. What we committed to do at that meeting was to act as a facilitator for institutions that are interested in this, and to try to begin to get a better idea of who is interested in doing this and what that type of degree would look like, and begin to amass some background information and research, as well as see what we can do working with the Texas Learning Objects Repository in terms of finding a common place where open source materials that have been vetted by Texas faculty can either reside or be linked to, since that helps considerably with the textbook piece. So you will probably hear more about this. The commissioner said that he would like to see a couple of these programs operating by 2013. So that's something that you may be hearing about, and you may have me emailing you and asking you about if your institution is interested, or what sort of discussions are going on at your institution regarding that. So all I would ask is that you keep the incredulity to a minimum and don't direct it at me. So that is what's going on here.
Any questions for Van?
Could you say something about SB 945, the reverse articulation bill? How prescriptive is that? Is there any kind of funding associated with it? Statewide data sharing system?
Let me pull it up.
Okay.
Give me just a sec, and
Okay.
I can pull up the text. I haven't read it in a while. My memory is that it's not very prescriptive.
Okay.
And my memory is that there's no funding attached to it.
Okay.
But I can pull it up right now. It was a really brief sort of two-pager.
While Van's pulling it up, to follow up on the $10,000 degree issue, I'm curious if any of y'all have had ongoing discussions on your campus about this. I know that at UTSA we did. We engaged a series of discussions about the elements of a $10,000 degree. I'm curious if this discussion is taking place around the state.
At our institution, about 2 weekends back, it was on the agenda of a retreat that we had with the Board of Regents. We didn't quite get to it, and so it's going to be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, good, thank you.
To answer your question, Marshall, the bill would apply to students who have earned at least 30 semester credit hours at a public junior college, and have also then earned at least 90 semester credit hours cumulative at both the public junior college and the university. When a student would hit that 90 semester credit hour mark, the bill would require the university to email or other reasonable method shall request authorization from the student for the institution to release the student's transcript to the public junior college that the student previously attended for the purpose of determining whether the student has earned the credits required for an associate degree. And then after receiving a student transcript, the the junior college shall review the transcript, and if the public junior college determines the student has earned the credits required to receive an associate degree awarded by the junior college, may award the student the degree. So it would require universities to assess whether or not a student was eligible and get their permission to share their transcript, and then it would require the university to send the transcript to the junior college, community college. It would require the community college to review it and determine whether or not it is appropriate to award an associate degree.
And wasn't the Texas Common App modified this last year?
Yes, it was.
Okay, to deal with the issue related to the sharing of records.
Yes,
All right, great.
from here on out, starting this year, students were asked to check a box on the Texas Common App that would proactively provide any institution permission to share their transcripts for the purpose of reverse articulation.
Good, that's good.
There is, to the best of my knowledge, no funding associated with this.
Is that bill moving?
Yes, it is actually out of the Senate, and it's in House Higher Ed right now.
All right.
And there were no amendments made to it. It sailed through pretty cleanly and quickly.
Okay, on your agenda, items 4 and 5, we're going to swap order on those. We're going to handle items 6 and 7 before 4 and 5. These are two submissions by institutions for approval to change the modality of a doctoral degree into an online doctoral degree. We'll take first the major in curriculum and instruction from Texas Tech. And Bhagya, do you want to lead us through this? No? For those folks who have read the Texas Tech proposal.
They may not be on the line yet.
Oh, okay.
We had told them to get online around 10:45.
All right, so we'll do a little tap dance.
Yeah.
I'll send them an email if you like.
Yeah, would
That'd
you
be great.
please, Matt?
And just to remind everybody, in these circumstances, when a proposal comes before the DEAC for a change of modality, we are currently only doing that for doctoral programs. And just to refocus our energies and our interest in these, our purview is to review whether we feel that the institution is prepared to support distant students in their doctoral program, and really have very little to say about other aspects of doctoral proposals. Frequently, the institution will have already received approval to offer this program on ground, and they're asking for a change in modality. In those instances, correct me if I'm wrong, Van, but I believe we are essentially the last review step. Those proposals go from us to the commissioner for final approval rather than back to the full coordinating board if it's simply a delivery modality change.
Actually, this would be a good time. If you remember last time I told you that we had some rules pending.
Right.
And that rule change did pass in the April meeting. And so for an institution that is authorized to offer a doctoral program and they're offering it on their campus face-to-face, and they wish to either transition it to distance ed or add distance ed, the process now is that they submit a proposal, like they always have. Staff review it. The DEAC doctoral subcommittee reviews it. DEAC reviews it. And then those decisions no longer go to the full board. They go to the commissioner or the commissioner's designee. What we found was that for the last 2 years, we have been taking these things to the board, and they have been placed on the consent agenda. So there was no discussion of them at all. And it seemed like it was easier then to go ahead and let the authority be at the commissioner's level if the institution already had the authority to offer a doctoral degree. And that helps y'all out. It helps the institutions out a bit because it means that you don't have to wait for a board meeting.
How many folks had a chance to read the proposals? Excellent, thank you. What do you want to do?
We'll go ahead and start talking about it. I'm not sure there's going to really be
Okay.
a discussion. And then if there's questions,
That makes sense.
let them answer it when they come online.
Let me go ahead and start the discussion about the Texas Tech proposal. The doctoral subcommittee did review this. They had absolutely no substantive changes. They had a few requests regarding some clarity on library services and orientation. Would that be correct? Okay. But other than that, the recommendation was for approval with those requested clarifications. Are there any, for the folks that read it, are there any questions that we can begin to stack up for the tech reps when they get on?
Tech consistently sends in well-written proposals for everything they do. Maybe they should have class. Or send a consultant out.
There you go. Set up a revenue operation.
I mean, it's just so consistent that they just nail them.
Yep. We were
Do we have
commenting.
any of
Go ahead.
them? I'm sorry. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Do we have any of the exemplary ones right now posted on the coordinating board website that we could point people towards?
I know we used to.
We do not have them posted right now. When we're asked for them, we happily share them. And I think I just heard somebody come online on the phone.
Do we have somebody online?
Hello.
Ah, I hear a voice. Can we increase the volume?
In the wilderness?
Hello?
Hi, this is Valerie Payton from Texas Tech.
Hi, Valerie. Let us, we can barely hear you, and it's on our end. Let us adjust the volume.
Here? Want me to bring the phone over there. Bring the phone over there.
Now we're good. Valerie, who else do you have with you?
We have Doug Simpson, professor from Curriculum and Instruction, Walter Smith, who is the division chair or department chair of Curriculum and Instruction, and Gary Elbow, who is the associate vice provost.
That's great. Thank you. This is Rob Robinson, chair of the DEAC, and you're coming in to the whole board, and we're happy to have you online. We were just discussing your proposal while we waited for you to come on. Thank you for being flexible and coming on a little early. And let me recap. Our doctoral subcommittee reviewed your proposal. Their recommendation was approval with two we felt minor requests for clarification. One is more explanation about an orientation process for these students, and the other is more discussion about library services. Bhavya, would that be
orientation
correct?
And library.
Okay. But again, the recommendation from the subcommittee was for approval. And
hi, this is Doug Simpson.
Hi, Doug.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can.
Great. Our orientation session is oriented around a couple of different items. One is the orientation materials that are online that will be housed, a lot of it on the library website, especially how to access personnel and resources in the library. The other dimension is a face-to-face orientation that we have with all students. And in this one sense, it's an ongoing orientation. It begins with a 2-day orientation as the cohort comes in. And in that 2-day orientation, we have an orientation to each of the faculty members in the program, primary professors, an orientation to the overall program. We have people from the library that come in and meet with them and take them to the library to interact face-to-face on the site. And we give an overview of programmatic requirements, which they already have, but we answer questions, so forth. And then each summer they come back to campus for 2 weeks and do some face-to-face time with one course, and then other face-to-face time with advisors, with key personnel in the College of Education, and anyone else they would like to, they indicate that they would like to meet and talk with on any particular subject or subject. Walter, do you have anything to add?
This is Walter Smith, Chair of Curriculum and Instruction. I think another way of thinking about the face-to-face, is team building. Team building between the members of the cohort and between the students and the faculty. We have found with other programs that, we can do lots of things online. Having that commitment to each other and that feeling of trust in each other is very important, so we'll be building that during the orientation.
There's one thing that I left out, I should have mentioned. During the orientation each summer, the cohort students will meet with a number of our face-to-face students on campus. And so it will give a good opportunity for both groups of students to interact, to learn from one another, to raise questions that we as professors might not raise, but our students will definitely raise.
Great, thank you. The way we typically run these sessions is that since this is before the entire DEAC right now, we're going to open this up for questions. At the end of that period, we will ask you to hang up the phone. We'll have a conversation, and the results of our discussion will be communicated to you by the coordinating board staff. And so
Did you wish for us to talk about library resources, or is that going to come in the questions?
Yeah. Library resources? Yes, why don't you go ahead and talk about library resources?
I think the short answer, at least for me, this is still Walter Smith, Chair of Curriculum and Instruction, is that even in our face-to-face classes, we have grown to rely less and less on the physical presence of the library and more on the virtual library, if you will. So our students do searches, they gather data, they receive whatever the articles are or whatever electronically. So I think this is going to be a pretty seamless transition from what's already going on in our face-to-face, just the way the world operates these days in what we think of as the library and the online program.
This is Doug again. We also have a librarian whose major responsibilities are to interact with the College of Education, and she'll be a part of our orientation program so that our students will get to know her, interact with her face-to-face, and have a really good experience with her as well as in the library.
Great, thank you. Are there other questions for the tech reps? I'm looking around the table, and this is unusually quiet for this crowd, and you should take that as a compliment to the quality of your submission. We felt it was very well written. All right, last chance for questions, folks. All right, at this point, what we'd like you to do is go ahead and hang up. I appreciate you coming on the line. I appreciate your clarifications. We will have a final discussion and make a vote, and that'll get communicated to you by coordinating board staff in the next day or so.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, they could jump on the webcast and see what we're talking about.
Right. Cross my mind.
Yeah.
All right. I think the general consensus is that it was a complete, well-written, well-researched. I personally appreciated the statistical analysis of the needs survey. It went a little more in depth than some of the ones we've seen before, and I applaud that. At this point, I'm going to assume that Matt is going to recuse himself from this vote. And at this point, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Good. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the Texas Tech education and curriculum instruction, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Done. Okay, next on the agenda is the Distance Education Doctorate of Education with a major in Educational Leadership from Lamar University. And we have representatives here. Do we also have representatives on the phone? Okay. If you folks would introduce yourself, we'd appreciate it.
Jason Nixon, I am Assistant Dean of the Department of Education and Director of
Why don't y'all come up and sit with us? I don't want you to feel like you're keeping it the far side of the room.
Oh, Mike. We probably could have a microphone.
And we're going to make sure you have a microphone as well.
Okay.
That's weird. Okay. Good timing.
Ooh, pretty, yeah.
folders at the school this bright red or just this program?
Now they're cardinal red.
Cardinal red, that's right.
Really? I appreciate bright colors. They make me feel good.
All right, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
I'm Jason Mixon. I'm the Assistant Dean in the College of Education.
Steve Jenkins, I'm Chair of the Ed Leadership Department.
Hollis Lowry Moore, Dean for the College of Education and Human Development.
Thank you all for traveling up here and participating in the meeting. And I didn't hear anybody come online yet, but I believe some of your colleagues are coming on.
We should have our provost, Dr. Doblin, and also representing administration and Dr. Stephanie Yearwood.
Great, thank you. When the doctoral subcommittee reviewed this proposal, in general, I thought it was comprehensive. We had some questions that I think will come out regarding aggressiveness and student ratio and that kind of stuff. And again, just to corral the discussion, our intersect from the DEAC is to ensure that the students who are taking these programs at a distance are well supported. And that is our primary concern. Of secondary concern, frankly, is that the faculty teaching at a distance are well supported institutionally as well and trained. And so with that, what I'd like to do is open it up for questions and discussion.
Actually, we have a formal presentation.
Oh, do you have a formal presentation? I'm sorry.
I would just like to take 5 to 10 minutes to kind of,
please do,
if that's okay.
Yep.
Obviously, and I teach in the doctoral program as well. That's a role prior to and still as the assistant dean. I teach in the doctoral program, so my experience that I'm going to be speaking about today is obviously a professor within the Ed Leadership doctoral program. We began this endeavor basically for 3 different prongs. We were wanting to address diversity. 18 characteristics of the doctoral program, obviously, which we're gauged by. One of those components that we have been asked to improve was diversity. And Beaumont, Texas, drawing students of diversity, we knew we needed to expand our net in reference to drawing those students. And so that was one of our impetus to change and look at moving supporting both the face-to-face and moving to an online delivery model. And also looking at our student demand. Over the last 4 years, we have graduated over 4,000 graduates of our Ed Leadership Master's Program. And so the demand from our students was pushing, obviously, to pursue to that terminal degree. And so for about 2.5 years, we've been looking at and we wanted to begin with the end in mind, obviously, to quote Covey, because it's not the difficulty of transferring a class online. It was the dissertation process. And so we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years addressing the dissertation process. And what you have in your packet, specifically, I'd just like to highlight, is the dissertation process in reference to a tiered model and thinking through, and we have a 60-hour program, and thinking through that dissertation process of looking at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. As students enter the program, we are looking at assigning a mentor faculty that was within the College of Education. And that mentor faculty member could serve as the chair, but would not have to serve as the chair, could serve as a committee member. But it's that contact and that communication, obviously, with a person within our College of Education to assist those students. And so if you're looking at Tier 1, we thought about the process of our faculty, and we actually surveyed our faculty to find the strengths or their perceived strengths of where their expertise was. And we had some, obviously, that were excellent research design, methodology, APA experts, on down statistical reviews, etc. And that's including our current doc faculty plus faculty that have served within the College of Education and have served on committees, but their primary role has been teaching in the College of Education in the Master's Program for Educational Leadership. And so thinking through this process, we felt like in support of the students, both student-to-content support, student-to-instructor support, and obviously student-to-student support, we wanted to tier this process of classes 1 through 10, addressing these areas and that product, the dissertation starting when they walk through the door. Our current program has a 95% success rate of our students graduating within 8 semesters. And we want to continue that. And the reason we feel like we have that success rate is from the time the student enters our program, they are working on a topic from the day they walk in. And obviously we're refining that topic to a hypothesis and looking at filling those gaps in research in reference to what's not there. And so once that student enters our program, the products and the interaction between classes will continue that product from Tier 1. And the only way you can move from Tier 1 to Tier 2 is that you have your mentor approval, that your product, in this case obviously a working dissertation or a working proposal at this stage, would allow that to move to Tier 2. Then obviously there's we have the content specialist, the editor, then that's when we would submit them to a committee, and both internal committee as well as external committee. Right now we currently have faculty that are serving on our committees that are not full-time faculty members within our department. For example, we have a professor from the University of Texas at Tyler, and we offer temporary membership into the graduate faculty to be in that capacity to use that person's expertise. And so we would use instructional associates to assist us in this process. And also in looking at this process, what's the number? What's a magic number? And obviously researching and looking at our current program, which carries between 30 to 40 per cohort in our face-to-face, and obviously the success that we've had with our master's program in reference to the numbers of class, we felt like one lead faculty member with 2 instructional associates, and obviously those instructional associates would carry a terminal degree and have experience in working with the dissertation and sharing dissertations, etc. And we've already made phone calls and know of some folks, obviously, that are interested in serving in that capacity. Some are retired, some are current professors still working in other areas, and to assist us. And so the 35 to 50 that you had in the proposal is a number that we felt like that makes the ratio actually 1 professor to 17 students, because it would be 3 per course. The course is 50. And obviously the professors would continue with what we currently have in reference to chairing dissertations, which would be between 4 to 7. When the program started, some of the professors had actually 8 to 10 when it first started, but they would not be chairing 50 dissertations. The 50 is obviously for the class, which would be then 3 to 50, which would be a 1 to 17 student ratio, which is actually a little better than what we currently have in reference to our current program of face-to-face. And so we'd be running 2 programs, dual programs, same content in reference to delivery. Obviously the delivery mode would be different, and our face-to-face students come in twice a month on weekends. We run a Friday, Saturday program. And then obviously moving to Tier 3, to go back to the schematic that you have before you, moving to Tier 3 obviously would require mentor approval, committee approval, and then obviously that would be them moving into the actual defense of their dissertation. What you have on the last page is a flowchart describing what I just basically shared with you in reference to the faculty and faculty to support. The faculty would have 10 students that they mentor. And as you see at the top, the senior faculty member of record, you have the 2 of the instructional associates, and this is obviously per class. And then you would have 10 students, obviously roughly 25 students per instructional associate with the mentors at the bottom to provide that support. And obviously having done this and working with students, we currently have Adobe Connect, which is obviously the synchronous component of our program, and so we have built in our current system technology weekends to where we actually hold class online, real-time, asynchronous, and we feel like at Lamar, with the success of our master's program along with the success of our doctoral program, that we would take the positive best practices of each, merge those into a doctoral program to offer our students, number 1, the demand, number 2, to increase our diversity, Number 3, obviously, is accessibility and affordability for our students in the rural areas that don't have the accessibility to drive into a campus or to work, I guess, individually to some degree in parts of the regions of the state. Lastly, and then Stephen and the Dean can add comments, we feel like the resources that we have within the program we've been fine-tuning over the last 4 years. The library, obviously our current students utilize that, even the face-to-face students utilize that in a virtual environment because most of our students drive into Beaumont. We do have some surrounding, but most of the students drive in. Currently with our face-to-face, we envision our students having access, obviously, to databases, abstracts, ProQuest digital dissertations in reference to pulling research in the virtual environment, and obviously, to some degree, feel like that those students would enjoy the component of being able to the access at home and access via work and where we're located, obviously not having to drive in. Steve?
The only thing I would address is the quality of the online instruction. Beginning over 2 years ago, because we were looking at an online doctorate, we began to realign the Masters in Ed Leadership, whereas all students now take an action research course in the very second course, and that course involves them reviewing at least 3 dissertations. One of them was the NASSP Dissertation of the Year, Johnny Brasinio's, and they begin to understand literature review. They begin to understand how to formulate a question, a hypothesis, etc. We do that in the master's program now, knowing that many of these 4,000 may be the seamless kind of extension to a doctoral program. And our students are quite adept at handling the rigor of an online program and creating a kind of a collaborative community of scholars among themselves along with the professors. And that's what the schematic on your 3rd page was supposed to demonstrate. I have to say we have a unique, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. We represent a lot of different institutions here. But I have never worked in an institution with so much enthusiasm. When I asked how many of you would be willing to mentor at least 10 doctoral students, I had 20 responses from the 20 faculty members. And we also have 20, as Jason said, potential instructional associates that would chime in and be happy to assist in that realm as well. So I think the quality of the online instruction has been proven in what we've done with our master's and our superintendent principal certification.
And I'd just add, you know, a lot of people get hung up on the numbers because it does seem large. I think some of us went through doctoral programs where 10 students seemed to be a great deal. We have had enormous support from our university administration in terms of the resources, personnel. We are currently in the process of looking for 2 doctoral faculty members. The last few years, because we have had a large online presence, most of the people that we interview for positions, we make sure have the interest, the enthusiasm for, and the skills and knowledge to assist with this kind of program. We do have, and I think it's probably in your proposal somewhere, or certainly it's already been approved in our current doctoral program that's face-to-face, a matrix we use for admission to the program. We have extremely high quality applicants. The first year I was at Lamar 7 years ago was the first year of our face-to-face doctoral program. And I guess one of my concerns as we went forward was, you know, when will we not be able to draw enough students for this program from this region? Because one of the things you don't want to do is hire people and then not have anything for them to do or have to get rid of them. That has not been the case. We always have about 3 times the number of applicants as we do slots. I want to be assure everyone that as we put this program online, we are going to be just as conscientious about admission to the program, and probably more so than we are with our face-to-face program. Those numbers are there as guidelines. If we only have 20 applicants that we feel can be successful in this program, we'll only take 20 applicants. If we have 40 that we think will be successful in this program, and we have the resources to do it, the faculty in place, no one's retired, and we haven't replaced them, that kind of thing, we won't take that many. We are very cognizant of being able to provide the kind of support that you mentioned for these online students. Most of you know about our master's program online. We went through a very, very strenuous SACS review process, and that was, of course, one of the key issues. The two things with the SACS review process were the numbers and the instructional associates. But we were able to share with our visitors the success of this model, and they were 100% sure it was working. So we're glad to answer any questions you have, and hope we didn't take too much of your time.
No, absolutely.
I do want to mention one quick thing, because you mentioned support, and I just wanted to just highlight one quick thing in reference to the support of our students in regards to the instructional associates. And also allowing those students through web conferencing. And once they come in and they've selected a topic, or maybe two topics of interest, those students will be assigned into professional learning communities for discussion boards, for collaboration on campus. We are going to offer seminars on campus. They're not mandatory, but we feel like many of our students will take advantage of, if we bring in an APA expert or we bring someone in that's an expert in research design, we feel like a lot of those individuals will come in. So we're going to replicate as close as possible our current face-to-face program in reference to support with our online students as well.
I appreciate that presentation. I think we had some folks join us on the phone. If those folks could introduce themselves, that'd be great.
Oh.
Folks on the phone, can you?
Yes, this is Steve Goblin, Provost at Lamar University.
Welcome, Steve.
Thanks. And Stephanie Yearwood, our SACS liaison, is here too.
Great. I appreciate it. Well, your team has been giving us a presentation about the proposal, which we appreciate.
Say again, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I said your team has been giving us an overview of your proposal, which we appreciate.
Okay, is it going on right now?
Yes, we're about to go into the question session.
Okay, thank you. We're available if we have any questions. Do you have any questions for us?
Thank you. All right. I'd like to open it up for questions. You know, I think, and let me take the first jump in here, just for clarification. You know, the success of your master's program has been noted around the state. There is.
We just turned on the broadcast. I'm having trouble hearing. Wait a minute.
Hey, Steve, would you mind muting your phone?
Say again?
Could you possibly mute your phone?
Mute my phone. Maybe. I have no clue. Here we go.
Thank you very much. Noting the success of your master's program, obviously when this first popped up, there was a lot of interest in this, and I'd just like you to explain if there is any intersection with academic partnerships or higher education holdings with this program.
No interaction. We chose because of scalability and also the financial model. We felt like the Blackboard would be the best LMS for this system, for this program, and also our professors are currently have courses that are in Blackboard, so they're already trained in Blackboard, and that's Blackboard 9 would be the most recent that we would utilize. And so no, there are no future relationships in reference to academic partnership with this specific program.
May I just say, the main reason we went into our partnership with academic partnerships on the master's program is we were new to this, totally new. We had not done online. Paula had a lot of dual credit courses online and those kinds of things, but we had not done online in our college in a big way at all. Unlike Texas Tech that has, years of experience in that. We needed the training. We needed the platform, and because it's a little more user-friendly platform than Blackboard for some people. And we needed the marketing, because we didn't have the resources to do those things. Those things are in place now in terms of our platform. Most of our faculty are trained on Blackboard now, as well as the learning management system that Academic Partnership provides for us. And we're also much better trained in the use of technology and how to put together instructional design and those kinds of things for online courses. We don't need the marketing now because we have 4,000 applicants that ask us repeatedly when we're going to put the doctoral program online. We had graduation Saturday, and we had 300 of our master's students come to Beaumont for graduation, and almost every one of them came through the line, and I handed them their diploma. When are you going to have the online program? When are you going to have the online program? So it's really some services that were provided early on that we no longer need.
All right, thank you. Matt?
I'll go ahead and launch. Of the 16 core faculty that you have listed in the proposal, how many have terminal degrees in educational leadership?
We actually have 20 with terminal degrees in ed leadership in our department.
Okay. Now, of the 16 listed in the proposal, and I'm just getting at a concern, a personal concern I have with student-faculty ratio. Of the 16 listed, do any of those have any responsibilities to the 2,200 master's level students in your program?
Yes.
So if we take a student-teacher ratio, a student-faculty ratio, and include those master's level students of 2,200 plus your on-campus plus this rather ambitious growth that you're looking at or projected in the doctoral program, as I do the math, I see about 153 to 1 faculty ratio.
We have a little unique situation, I think, for most universities in that we do have primary doctoral faculty. They do nothing but doctoral program. Then we have support faculty who also work some in the master's program. Mostly those support faculty that are also doing master's students would not be dissertation chairs. They will be mentoring, they will help in their area of specialization, but they would not be the primary faculty responsible for doctoral students. They're support faculty. Also, our ed leadership faculty in our master's program rotate in and out of the online program. We may have one or two that some semesters do nothing but the online courses, but that's rare. Most people do some of the face-to-face courses, then they'll kind of rotate into the online program. They'll take a break from that. Someone else will come in and work with our online programs. For the most part, we've developed these programs in teams, these courses in teams, so that can happen.
So these 16 faculty in ed leadership are tenured or tenure occurring?
Yes, everyone except the instructional designer, I think, and I can't remember if that person is listed or not, but everyone else is tenured and tenure tracked.
That might be very helpful if it were further explained in the proposal, as well as the terminal degree, because you had area of interest, I think, or area of teaching specialty, but you didn't have what the terminal degree is. Another question I have to ask is, and I've worked personally for 12 years with an online doctoral program, is a working professional, I'm assuming most of these are going to be most of the students will be fully employed in public schools. What is the wisdom of an accelerated program of people who have very busy lives already in a doctoral program? Now, it's very different than a master's program, I think. And a personal example I always use is, a bachelor's program may be here, a master's here, but a doctoral program is something very different, I think, in most of our hearts, and for most of us who've achieved that goal. So talk at that in terms of the accelerated program at the doctoral level, and are there models nationally where the accelerated program is being used?
Our
successfully for doctoral education.
Program. Our current program is an 8-semester program with a 95% completion rate. Keep in mind our demographic.
The current doctoral program is an accelerated program.
Yes.
8 semesters.
Eight semesters.
Got it.
Yeah. And Our demographics, our largest demographic is 36 to 50 age group. And most of those folks try to shy away from universities that have a 5 to 7 year doctoral record. So if they can get through in a shorter period of time and still maintain the quality, I think for their professional growth, they're anxious to find a program that has the quality to be able to do that.
And also something that's unique about this, instead of taking 9 hours and focusing on 3 different subjects at one time, they focus on one subject at one time for 5 weeks. For example, scholarly writing would be the first course. And so that assists in the busy lifestyle of our individuals. Instead of having to write 3 papers or having to address 3 different subjects, they're addressing one for 5 weeks, then there's a week break. The next class would be the applied research, and there are some seamless projects that obviously scholarly writing, which is primarily the lit review process, leads right into the applied research in reference to qualitative, quantitative research design, etc. And so we try to, we know that we do a pretty good job of seamless curriculum in reference to building on each other for these very busy students. And so we feel like this model of addressing one thing, and it's overwhelming from our students that they tell us that, hey, I'm addressing one subject matter as opposed to 3, and therefore we feel like they're much more successful. And also, if you look on Appendix D, on page 32 of the proposal, it has the highest degree earned of the 16 of the faculty resources.
Right, but it doesn't say what those degrees are in, and that was my question.
I got you. Okay.
You know, are they in curriculum instruction or special education or higher ed or whatever?
Okay. The 16 that are listed on page 12 and in the special area, all of those are ed leadership except Dr. Ken Young, whose doctorate is in ed psych.
Are there other questions?
My question is still about, to follow up with the 16 faculty you've identified, to just clarify with what Matt was asking. How many of are these all the faculty going to be dedicated just to the doctoral program, or do they have shared responsibilities, correct?
Shared responsibility.
How many of them typically have shared responsibility with the master's program? So out of the 16 listed, does it mean what half of them are focused on the master's program and half of them on the doctoral program? Is that what it works out to be?
Pretty close.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty close.
The faculty-student ratio bothers me, truthfully, a little bit. I mean, I know these are just numbers and the recommendations, but if you do a quick calculation and say you have 16 faculty, you're advertising for 2 more, and you have also said you're going to hire 1 for every year of the program. So that gives you a total of 22 faculty. At the top ratio of 250 to 260 students, your ratio is going to be 0.08, assuming that these faculty are dedicated only to the doctoral program. And I think that's fairly low ratio.
We would also, though, hire 2 additional instructional associates for each of the courses.
It's a differentiated staffing model. We hear you loud and clear, and it's kind of, we had to explain this in great detail to SACS as well in reference to differentiated staffing, and those instructional associates would obviously be people that have terminal degrees. They're not full-time tenured track positions. They would be non-tenured, non-resident instructional associates, but obviously have that experience, which we currently do with our face-to-face. We have people that get temporary membership into the graduate faculty to serve on a committee. And what we feel like this will do will allow us to, if there is a person that retired and is an expert in school population, we're able to pull that individual in to work with a student that's maybe looking at growth in an urban area or something to that effect. It allows us to expand the net to some degree to assist us in this process. And so the numbers understand, and we've looked at that and looked at the feasibility, scalability, and we feel like with the surveys and the information that we've gathered from individuals that we've talked to that are currently either in education or retired, that we feel like we would have enough. And what I mean by enough is it would be those individuals that might serve on 10 committees or 5 committees as opposed to half of the half of the master's faculty members that obviously has half time in the master's and half time in the doctorate. And so it's a differentiated staffing model that's obviously unique to a doctoral program that's not currently.
But and if I might jump in on that, when you talk about terminal degrees, you're talking about an EDD or a PhD?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess it's what's nagging at me just a bit too is and the whole notion that, you know, you bring in expertise, but do they have expertise in research, or do they have expertise in the field of practice? And, you know, will you be able to find sufficient expertise in research, published research, to really contribute to what the state expects us to have as a high-quality doctoral program? People who have been active both in the field and in research publication.
Our charge is to do that, yes, sir. And of the people that we've spoke to, I would have to say it was a pretty good balance of research and practitioners.
Well, since this is a new model, might I suggest that some more explanation in a proposal would make us feel much, much better about what we are asked to approve or not approve on, in terms of what is this faculty going to look like? Who, you know, what are the expectations for the instructional associates, and what is the criterion from which they would be selected? Because I have to applaud you guys. You guys have been very creative in a number of different ways.
Well, we have the current past president of the National Council of Professors of Ed on our faculty, and the immediate former executive director of the National Council of Professors of Education Administration. We brought him on particularly to help launch, and he's done a lot of work in online dissertations. Without revealing names, we would probably be more than happy to identify the type of recently retired senior faculty members from well-known universities who have been approached and said, would you be willing to be an instructional associate? Would you be willing to help chair or serve on committees? And we've gotten great response so far.
I truly, I second what Matt said. The responsiveness of the market is very creative. I mean, there's no doubt you have a huge market, and the responsiveness to that, especially with the view of looking at diversity and increasing reach, is definitely applauded. But when I look at Section 6, point number 2, which really outlines a differentiated staffing model, the last line in there says adjunct doctoral instructors will be utilized as needed. It might be helpful to have a little more detail on what does that mean. Does it mean that if for every 10 students you're going to add another adjunct instructor?
I think, I'm sorry, Sinead, maybe one of the good additions would be this supplementary chart with more explanation into the actual proposal.
Okay. I have to say the numbers thing was what also jumped at me, but having said that, not wanting to hammer it to death, because I think we almost have now, I have to say the model that you have used to make the best use of resources is something that you must find a way to share with others. I certainly, speaking on part of our institution, hope that I can make my colleagues aware of this.
Sure.
Are there other questions? Patrick?
Thank you. I had a question about Appendix E, which is your budget, and looking at the Section 5, Item A, anticipated headcount, and how you hope to grow. And I was looking in particular at the instructional associates budget line and course development. And it appears that there's money on that line item for course development in years 1 and 2, but not subsequently in years 3, 4, and 5. So one, I wondered if you could address that. And then also instructional associates are kind of budgeted separately from, just in the way it appears here, from your other personnel. And I wonder if they are serving as independent contractors, if there's a go-between or broker that you're using to identify them, or exactly what the hiring process and credentialing is for instructional associates.
Go ahead, Jason.
Let me address the first one, I guess. And in course development, by year 2, the reason there's no other course development is we're hoping, obviously, to have the courses developed in-house by that second year, all courses. And matter of fact, we are doing that as we speak, developing courses. The instructional associates job description, to kind of address what we're looking for in reference to what they're going to be doing. Was that?
Yes, and how you select them, if you have some
independent contractors.
Yeah, there's going to be independent contractors, and obviously they'll be paid according to the course. And we've looked at paying them similar to what we pay adjuncts, and thus the reason I know the adjunct title was a little alarming to some in reference to reading it, but basically it's instructional associates, but the pay would be similar. $4,000 is what we currently pay, and so that's where you see the price. But as far as what the instructional associates are going to be required to do, they're going to be assisting in delivery of the course. They're going to be facilitating web conferences, both synchronous and asynchronous, via discussion board and Adobe Connect. They will be grading and assisting us in grading those students. They will serve as a mentor for those students. And then when needed, and what I mean by when needed, maybe that's not the best terminology, but it is all dictated upon the study of the student. And so what we don't want to do is to place someone on a committee that their expertise, going back to Matt's comment, we don't want to place someone on a committee that their expertise maybe is not in research or their expertise is not practitioner. And so we use that needed title because we're going to have to obviously be selective with these instructional associates based on their expertise. And for example, scholarly writing, which is my course, which is the first course, I would search for 2 individuals that obviously have an extended research agenda and has published in many national and state peer-reviewed journals to serve and assist me in that class. And we have some people already identified. And so there's where you see the instructional associates in reference to the budget and obviously course development.
And that seems to be in the same line item, so does it imply that the instructional associates will in fact be responsible for course development?
That's negative, no.
Okay.
I'm sorry, maybe we should have separated that, but we put it under other, which was instructional associates, travel, and obviously course development. But instructional associates will be assisting to some degree, obviously. At the end of the course, we offer a review of the course. Every course that we have, there's a review amongst the professors to sit and discuss what was good, what was bad, and obviously the instructional associates will be included in that formal assessment to improve our courses as we go.
Thank you. That's a helpful clarification. I might recommend that you do separate that other into the specific 3 items that you addressed there.
And I might just say that I think our provost is probably still with us, but Dr. Doblin made us clear to us that Dr. Simmons would provide us with whatever resources would be necessary to make sure this is as successful, if not more successful, with our current program.
That's good.
And I would just add, because I think your concern is one that we've had over the years as we launched our master's program, is making sure the people we're using in this differentiated staffing model feel like they are part of Lamar University. They're trained by Lamar. They're connected to Lamar. These are Lamar courses. These are Lamar faculty-driven studies with support from people that we have, I think, become pretty good at connecting to us in many ways through various trainings and seminars, and we're still learning, of course. There's no end to this, is what we're finding, that there's always something new to learn. But I appreciate the gentleman's statement about sharing what we've had success with, because we have learned so much from other people who've had success, although we have not seen another university with this particular model. Now, it could be there, and we just don't know it, because I think many of our private, Dr. Baker, you asked that question, I think many private universities throughout the university have done maybe more of this than some of the public universities.
I think probably the ultimate model being held up right now is the partnership with USC and Ed Leadership. Mm-hmm. And that's getting a lot of spin.
It is.
a very positive spin. And I don't know what their numbers are. I don't know that much about the program.
Are there other questions?
Let's see. Again, going back to the instructional associates, how do you decide how many instructional associates are you going to have? Is it based on per course or based on number of students in a class? Or is it common that you're going to have 2 associates per course?
It's not, I'm sorry, it's a good question. It's going to be based on the enrollment of the cohort. So if we, like the dean said earlier, if we have 25 qualified candidates that meet our formula of 3.5 or above on a 4.0 scale, we have a formula, we multiply that by 200, and then we take their GRE, and it has to be 1350 or above. And so, again, these numbers are based off of our pool of graduates already. However, if they don't meet that formula, then we may have 20, which would then dictate maybe 1 associate or maybe not just the teacher of record. And so what we tried to do was we did not want to go above 1 to 20 ratio in reference to the doctoral student to teacher ratio. So that's the reason we put the numbers in, to show you kind of the high end, which would be the 50 students. We project that obviously that's the high end. We're going to probably come in under that, but we just want to leave it open in case, because we have a lot of excellent students in our program that's graduated, and we feel like because we did obviously a scan to see how many of our students would qualify right now if they wanted to join us, and thus the numbers that you have of 35 to 50 per cohort. So it wasn't a number taking out of thin air. It was a number that we used from data from our student body that we currently have, and we surveyed them. We've talked to them, obviously, individual to some degree, and we feel like we'll have some good quality individuals because of the demands there. And so that it's dictated on that.
And also, I'd like to add the study that they do, because we may have 2 good instructional associates, but if they don't have the expertise for that particular student's study, which is what we've been fairly successful in doing with our current doctoral program, is going out and finding those people that may be still working full-time, may not be, maybe at another university, but who have particular expertise and interest in that study, and we can bring them in this capacity to assist.
Thank you.
So how many, just for clarification, it's probably in here, are you thinking 2 tenure track faculty per committee, plus an instructional associate? I mean,
A committee of 3.
A committee of 3?
Yes, sir.
So is that...
That's current practice with our face-to-face.
Okay. And so you don't see that as any different
We
here?
don't see that as changing now. Obviously, with the differentiated staffing model, currently most of our, for example, I chair 5 dissertations and I serve on 13, 15 committees. That's my current practice, but again, I'm full-time doctoral faculty, but we envision maintaining that to some degree with 3 per committee plus serving on other committees as well.
And the dissertation they'll take at the end of the program?
Yes, sir.
12 hours of the dissertation are
We
at
have 4 classes of dissertation.
Tier 3 is really a lot.
But they begin it in the first course.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. That's the ideal. We'll put it that way. Some people change their minds.
Success rate, again, my job, I feel like, is to use a funneling exercise to take them from this topic to this topic, the first course. Again, I'd say 70% of the individuals are in the ballpark. We still have a few folks that's out in the parking lot for the second course, but most of them are in the ballpark, and my job is obviously to move them closer to refine that topic. But to be honest, most of them have not exhausted the research yet, and so obviously it'll meander depending on what gaps they're filling in research. And so, but we try our best for them, that first lit review. I don't want them to do a 20-page lit review on something they're not interested in. They do a 20-page lit review on something they're interested in, and obviously we hope that follows them throughout the program.
And we really think the start with our action research in our master's program has really added to that. One of the graduates on Saturday mentioned that he did his action research on single gender schools, and now HISD is going to experiment with their first single gender, and he's been named Dean of Students. And he said you know, Dr. Jenkins, that was my action research. Looks like it could be a doctoral dissertation to me. And I said, I think it would be. That's an excellent way to kind of go. And so I just think we began to prepare them for that long, arduous process, and oftentimes they begin, as Jason said, in that very second course with a very global picture, and all of a sudden after they've done some collaboration, they've narrowed it down and decided that, you know, what I really need to focus on to be effective is just why instead of the whole alphabet.
And we feel the benefit of that too will be the PLCs when we're going to group them in the discussion boards according to topics, even if it's secondary versus elementary possibly, or if it's a higher ed, because we have 3 cognates. I don't know if we did put that in the proposal, but we have a higher ed cognate, we have a multiculturalism and diversity cognate, and we also have effective schooling cognate. And so we have 3 different veins that we push students toward, because we do have the folks that are wanting to go straight higher ed, not principal, superintendent, etc.
Other questions? All right, I really appreciate you being as forthcoming as you have been, the participation, the presentations. Thank you for all the clarification. You saw how we run this, so we'll have a short discussion, and we will transmit the results of that to you all.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And Dr. Doblin, thank you for being on the line.
Our pleasure.
All right.
Thank you all again.
All right, take care. Yeah, he is.
Can it be any warmer in here?
Yeah, I'll call facilities. I'll text facilities and see if they can do something to the thermostat.
Funny, I was just thinking, hey, it's the first time I don't usually sweat.
I'm dripping icicle.
Have a jacket upstairs if we can't get it fixed. Okay.
Room temperature is never a consensus issue.
You're so kind. Thank you.
You are a gentleman.
I try very hard.
All right, folks. So let's open it up for discussion. Again, you know, I want to be very clear about what our area of expertise and consultation is in terms of reviewing this proposal. So, discussion?
My concern is really to make sure that there's support.
Microphone.
My concern is to make sure that there's support in place. And there's 3-4 things that came out of this discussion, which was we would like things added to the proposal to really give us a really good idea to see how the students are going to be supported. I mean, to me, even if you assume that with 2,200 students or whatever they're saying are in the master's program, we have to assume that out of the 16, 8 of them are going to be at least dedicated to the master's program. That leaves 8 people. If it takes the faculty-student ratio down to 0.004, which is, I mean, yes, these are just numbers, and we should not fix it on numbers, but the reality is that everything we do is based on numbers. So they have a plan for instructional associates. It's a plan that works, and if all the accreditation agencies like it, then that's good. I like the responsiveness to the market, because if there's a market out there, then somebody has to step in and help people get where they need to. But I'll be much more comfortable seeing what the plan is in writing for how they're going to go about finding people and recruiting them. I mean, obviously,
Instructional associates?
from the instructional associates and for supporting the students with dissertations.
Right.
If you're going to go find somebody who's going to, say, work on the esoteric nature of Web 2.0 applications on students' health, well, how are they going to go about finding somebody who does that? Two, what are the support structures in place to ensure that if you have 25 students to a class and you say, okay, now we're going to find 40, so you admit 40 to a class, then what does that mean? Are you going to go and find another instructional associate? Obviously. But then are you going to have a whole cadre of instructional associates sitting on the side who you can just drop in?
Right.
Or do you start the recruitment process at this point? So then what happens to the students? So I would like to see some clarifications about that thing in the proposal. I mean, other than that, I mean, I think it's a clarification thing that's needed.
You know, my sense is when we're talking about the the coursework, I don't have a whole lot of concerns. This is a model that's been proven out. The cohort of students is fundamentally different as that they are in a doctoral program, and doctoral instruction does significantly differ from master's and undergraduate. But my real concerns are with that access to the chairs of the dissertation committees come those 12 hours, and how they're going to support that process. I think that this proposal is sound. I don't see it as having any flaw, and I'm speaking personally. This is up to us, but I don't see it as having any flaws that would stop us from approving it. I do think that there are areas of clarification that we need to ask for, and I would like to ask for y'all's further discussion as to, am I off the mark on that assessment?
The model is very different. The model is very different because nobody that I know of has really tried this at this scale for the research piece.
Right.
And that makes it very different. I don't even think that, in one sense, the coursework at the master's level and the coursework at the doctoral level,
relatively similar.
That's not the really hard part of a doctoral degree.
Right.
The really difficult part is digging in on the research and doing the synthesis and the reflection, etc.
Which is highly consultative.
So, being a traditionalist, and I am, because, we're all victims of our last 15 minutes of experience.
Correct.
We're used to predominantly tenure-track faculty, and in some cases adjuncts serving in graduate faculty. But I think this is a new model. And I think the very least we can do is expect a great deal more information on how this new model will work. And I know it's beyond the purview of this group, but, and I'll just say it, they grab market share.
Absolutely.
Huge market share to almost become a single source provider for public school teachers in Texas at the master's level by discounting. And I'll just go on record and saying, I think that's easy to document by their pricing model. And I don't want to get into pricing model at the doctoral level because that's not our business, but our business is protection of the student and making sure that the student, through distance learning technologies, gets the best service possible. And so the bottom line is I think we need a lot more information.
Okay.
This has not gone to SACS at this point, correct?
It's my understanding it wouldn't need to. It would just be, they would just notify SACS of the change of
And then
modality.
it would just during the next review process is
Yes.
when SACS would really look at it.
That's correct.
So the ratio of faculty that your faculty members to students in the dissertation process will not comply with SACS, right?
I would not want to be one to make that judgment. I don't know how they would review it.
That's the part that, like you, I'm not clear on, and I would be very uneasy if I'm not clear on it to say, bless you, go forth and do good work, given the responsibilities of this group and the coordinating board both. I mean, I think my brain cells need to really understand that. And it's something that, again, in clarification in the writing, that I'd like to see in there. SACS says this is how we're meeting it, breathe easy. We are aware of this, we thought about it, and this is a new model, but this is how it's going to work. And this is the backup plan if it doesn't.
Right. Okay.
Rob, I don't think that there are any hard and fast guidelines in terms of faculty-student ratios at the doctoral level from SACS. I think it's sort of subject to interpretation depending on who you have on your review committee. And I don't want to beat the dead horse because I really do think it's dead. I think we're all concerned about the faculty-student ratios. And again, getting back to what's the purview of the committee, I think the fact that there's so many questions around this room about this whole section related to faculty-student ratios and how the student's going to be supported and successfully completing the doctoral program warrants us recommending. I mean, they justified it, I think, very ably in the room. They did not in the proposal. And I think if they can simply take what they explained to us and put that in a narrative form, then it's a much stronger document. It's a much stronger document for us. It'll be a much stronger document for SACS. I mean, when you look at the surface, it's unsustainable and untenable. If they can flesh out the use of these instructional associates to provide doctoral level instruction, I think it'd be tremendously helpful.
Agreed.
And again, I think that the graphs that they, the information that they provided to us today, when I looked at it,
it helps clarify.
It made sense.
Yeah.
It made sense. Whereas reading the proposal, the thing that jumped off the page is 250 doctoral students, 16 full-time faculty.
Right. And that term adjunct, which
exactly
also leaps out. Other comments?
I guess in looking at this model, to me it looks like the State U model where you have an instructor and coaches. I assume that, one of the issues that bothered everybody was a small group of faculty or instructor of records with a tremendous student base. I guess I think the model's pretty innovative. My question would be, other than their internal policy to hire terminal degree people, since those people teach the class, they grade the papers, I assume they're not the instructor of record. Is there any reason why they have to be credentialed if they're not the instructor of record?
I can't answer that.
And from the coordinating board's perspective, if let's say you look at the numbers and one instructor at whatever level, master's, undergraduate, or whatever, has, say, 500 students, does that raise any red flags, or, is that okay? Because in that model, if you reached whatever your threshold is, 10, 20, whatever students, you plug in another coach or another instructional associate. So you would automatically cover all the students with the new instructor for that piece, that section. But does that cause any issues, having those huge numbers for maybe one instructor record?
I think you just reiterated the core concern around the room. Again, that connection to our purview is, are the students going to be well served with this model at the doctoral level? And I think what is clear is that we need more assurances in the proposal itself about the ways in which the students will interact with the instructor of record as well as with these instructional associates. That's kind of the concern. Other comments?
Rob, I would add that I'd like to have some clarity around the makeup of dissertation committees.
Yeah, good.
Because I heard that instructional associates could serve on those, but they only have a minimum of 3 members, which that's not that abnormal. But if 2 of them were instructional associates, I think that would be a cause for concern. And I didn't hear that was something they wouldn't do.
What I heard, but I need it in writing to feel more
Same
comfortable. Here. What I heard was that 2 of their full-time faculty will be on each committee, but I'd like to see that in writing.
And again, that will stretch them very thin. If
Absolutely.
You do the numbers on 2 for each committee for 50 folks, then 250. If you're adding 1 a year, that's not going to
In the third year, when the first cohort are all in dissertation hours, I think it's going to be an interesting juggling act for the faculty.
Yeah.
Are there other comments? All right. Gay, do you feel like you captured enough of this discussion to be able to, would you like us to reiterate what our areas of concern are?
Let's clarify, because we've had 2 or 3 people chime in on.
I think it's clear that to be specific to their proposal, the Section 6, faculty resources, is where we would like more explanation. I'd like to have this graph that they supplied us today included in this proposal with some explanation of this model. Are there thresholds above which they're not going to go in terms of the student ratio for the faculty of record? Will they continue to add instructional associates under the single faculty of record, or will they bring in new faculty above some threshold?
Well, I think what would be really helpful is for them to create a flow chart.
Yeah.
Right, and drop it in a decision tree of some sort that says, okay, we're going to keep enrolling people till we hit this particular point, and we drop more support in for the students.
Well, and I think you have to say in the context of the entire graduate program and ed leadership.
Yeah. Yes.
In the context of the entirety of the program.
Not just the online cohort, but they've got duties on campus as well.
Correct.
And masters.
Yeah. You know, very directly, do they see, will they cap this program? I think the answer at the master's level was no. They were going to continue to grow the model, and that, you know, and that's worked for them. The question for the doctoral program, is there a top cap that they feel this model could not grow beyond?
Okay, there was also a question about clarification of how students interact with instructor of record and the associate.
Yes. And Patrick had asked for some clarification on the budget line, breaking out the instructional associates versus course development.
We also had talked about how they go about recruiting all the people, right?
Yeah.
Recruiting faculty.
Yeah, you meant faculty, not students, right? Yes,
Recruiting
correct.
instructional associates.
The students, it seems, it's very.
They're up.
You mind their own doctor. They
Right,
mind their own
exactly,
master's program.
exactly.
There's
And it's not clear
24.
they're going to do any aggressive marketing beyond that, nor do they need to.
And I might throw another one in that, and it's something I pointed out that hasn't been mentioned, but is there evidence that in a doctoral program, an accelerated 5-week schedule is effective?
Well, there sort of kind of is because of summer sessions that are 6 weeks. And some of them, depending on the school, some of them are 5 weeks, and they're doctoral courses.
But we're talking program, not terms.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sort of kind of. That's why I said sort of kind of.
All right, so what I'd like to lay out is that it sounds like what we will do is I'll ask for approval with the requested additional information, that revised proposal come back to the doctoral subcommittee, and then upon approval by the doctoral subcommittee, well, I don't know, what do you want to do? Does it come back here?
We need to table it until we get more information.
Well, okay, so what I'm talking about is once we ask Lamar for more information, that revised proposal come back, I do want to have a focused look within the doctoral subcommittee. And then whether or not we ask the doctoral subcommittee to, we grant them the right to approve, or whether it needs to come back to the full DEAC is the open question. My preference would be that the doctoral subcommittee be allowed the leeway to approve with these modifications, but if there is concern, then we'll bring it back here. What are your thoughts?
I think it's worthwhile to look at it.
To bring it back to the full DEAC?
And just do a phone call, right?
Okay.
We have done it before. We just done a quick phone call and.
Remember that those meetings have to be scheduled in advance.
When
and
do we
posted.
meet again?
We would not meet face-to-face again until the fall. However, that does not preclude us from having a conference call in the interim only to take up
This one
doctoral programs. Now, as Rob said, even those conference calls are subject to being posted for open record for 10 days, and trying to get a quorum during the summer has been difficult in the past. Not impossible, but it's a little bit more challenging.
Well, they want to start this fall, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah, so then they need
they need us to move along.
Can we realistically expect to be able to pull this off by the end of June?
I think this is up to them. I don't think it's up to us. Let's get a revised proposal and see.
Okay.
And then there's I think it does have to go to SACS as a substantive change because it's a change in modality at the doctoral level. So if they haven't made more progress than was indicated on that front, then I think it's a larger hoop than perhaps DEAC's recommendation. But I would feel most comfortable with tabling it, not approval contingent upon making changes, but bringing it back to the full group because it seemed like there was uniform concern around the larger group about it. So I think it deserves a review by that larger group again.
Okay. So is there inclusion of the SACS question in your listing?
That's irrelevant to us.
yeah, that's institutional.
Yeah,
Randy?
and I'd just like clarification again, based on our purview, what are our grounds, based on our purview, to review it any further? I mean, I appreciate all the comments, and I've got the exact same concerns, but based on our purview, what are the grounds
That in a distance modality, that the faculty-student ratio is of concern in terms of how well the students will be supported in a doctoral program.
Is that a valid concern? Is the student-faculty ratio any different in a distance modality than it is in face-to-face?
I think it's clear that it will be in this program, and if that's not the case, then if they could provide clarification on that. But my concerns about it are that that the distance modality highlights or magnifies an issue with a high student-to-faculty ratio. That access to that faculty member through the distance modality is a complicating factor for the student success. And what I think we need is clarification that they feel confident that they can address that. But it's a very good question, Randy, because we're in some ways dancing around the edge of what our oversight is. And so I do want everybody to be cognizant that our focus is on, because this is a distance-delivered program, what are our concerns? What does distance as a contributing factor relate to in terms of student success in this proposal? And again, I think the sense of the DEAC is that this is an innovative approach. It meets market need. There's a lot of positives to this approach. I think we need to feel confident that we're doing our job, that we're executing our job by making sure that this innovation is not at the detriment of the student.
Also, if it's to the detriment of the faculty that are involved, it will ultimately impact the student as well. And how much can a faculty actually do?
Right.
In a distance format.
Okay, let me summarize what I've heard. That we are tabling a decision on this proposal, asking Lamar University for clarification on a set of issues which will be communicated to them. When it comes back, we would distribute it and ask that we have a single-purpose teleconference DEAC meeting, and we will be sensitive to being timely in that based on when we get the revised proposal back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
If somebody would move that, we could actually vote on it and call it good. So what we need is a motion to table.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Are we all clear on what we're doing?
Sort of, kind of.
All right. All in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Need to note that Paula recused herself.
And Paula did recuse herself. Thank you, Paula. And we need to note that Matt did on the first one as well.
I did.
Okay.
So lunch is here.
Yep.
The Nate's committee is going to take some time, I think, during
Good.
lunch to meet. So.
Good. All right. That was fun. Let's break for lunch. Let us stop the webcast during lunch. Nate's committee that reviews institutional proposals would like to get together. Is that correct, Nate? And discuss some issues. So wherever you'd like to lead them to a corner with your lunch.
And would you do me a favor and turn your mics off during lunch? Because it may not be being webcast, but the mics will still broadcast out in the foyer.
We'll be back on the webcast. The next issue on our is picking up an open item from several meetings ago when we had formed a small subcommittee to look at whether the principles of good practice for electronically delivered instruction that we have adopted through the coordinating board is sufficient to address the growing area of hybrid and blended courses. So the question to them was, does there need to be a separate set of principles of good practice for blended and hybrid? And with that, and Randy McDonald chaired that group, and we'd like to ask him to present the results.
Okay.
I don't know. It looks like
You may remember we mentioned this at the last meeting, and what you have in front of you is no different. I can't remember if anything got passed out at the last meeting or not, but it
didn't.
It did not. Okay. Then what you have in front of you is the same old principles of good practice that we've had for a while. But if you recall, 3 meetings ago, there was a document that really introduced the question, do we need a separate document for the hybrid courses? And so what our committee did, with very little work really, is just examine the need, and there was some discussion, and then we ended up with a consensus of no, we don't need a separate document, but there are some wordings that can be brought in from what was kind of a draft of what that second document might be and added to the first one. So really there's very few changes on here from what you are used to seeing for the past several years. One change is item number 4 under the basic assumptions. We simply added the words that these principles are applicable, to what they always have been, but then added including those offered in fully online, hybrid, or other formats. So we just state explicitly that this document applies to all of them. And then the rest of the changes that you see in blue or red, some of those were suggestions from that draft document, when the draft for what the separate hybrid document would have been, and we incorporated some of those. And then some are some of our own strikes. We did very little editing. And so, we still have a typo?
It should be OR.
Yes. Under faculty support, there's been a typo noted and needs to be corrected. The only other thing that specifically mentions hybrids is on the second page under student and student services, the 4th bullet down adds some blue text in there that mentions hybrid courses. Okay.
Is it really the institution's responsibility to make a determination about an individual's access to the campus? I mean, there's some people who commute 50 or 60 miles and don't think about it, and there are others that, if you force them to walk across the street, it's a big deal. And I'm not sure that the institution, I mean, to me, that's really a student choice in terms of accessibility to campus. I don't know that we want to get into that level of, and I see Rob. Anyway, I don't think it's an institutional responsibility to make that kind of a call for a student.
Well, I see where you're coming from, and really, if there's to be further, deeper discussion, this particular point has been one that's always bothered me, even before we put this new language in. I think it deserves some more thought, but I agree with you on one level, but I think the justification for the point being there as it is simply a requirement that the institution has some kind of criteria. We have an inherent criteria anyway, whether it's stated or not. If you're offering a hybrid course, there is going to be some face-to-face, and so you're basically telling students there will be some face-to-face here, and you're assuming that they have sufficient access to campus. This just puts it explicitly in writing.
I think it's semantics. I think that what we're really striving for here is it's almost like a scheduling or a logistical issue, so that we clearly communicate to students when those on-campus activities are going to occur, so they can plan. I guess it's the word access that I'm not sure is as precise as what we're trying to imply.
Okay.
If someone were to ask to explain a situation in which this is an issue, how would we respond? I mean, I think to Marshall's point, are there any students that are enrolled at our campus where we bar access to them?
Well, what kind of liability?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. It's like, do we have wheelchair ramps?
What kind of liability do you set up if you say that you'll provide sufficient access to the campus, and that's part of the criteria, and once you've admitted the student, then you're bound to provide it? I think it's not clearly stated in the second bullet point. I think that might be where it'd be best addressed, that one of those pieces of clear, complete, and timely information about the curriculum and the course is, what do they have to do on site? When do they have to come to campus? And I think that's where the best practice is educating the student, let them make the decision about whether they can make it or not.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
Because we have students that drive several hundred miles to come to campus, and so do we go, oh, you're too far for a hybrid course? No, I'm not. It meets on Saturdays 5 times, and I'm going to get a hotel, or I'm going to stay with a friend. I'll be there. So I would like to see it removed from where it was added, but maybe stated more explicitly in that second bullet item about the university or the institution has to state explicitly any campus-based requirements.
Yeah.
I think that the original purpose of having enrolled students have reasonable and adequate access to the range of student services and student rights appropriate to support their learning. I think the original purpose of that language there was to specifically point out that online students should have access to the same academic support services that a student on the campus has access to. And that's something that y'all routinely look at whenever you're looking at doctoral programs. So I think this is maybe one of those cases where folding the hybrid into it so that we now are dealing with on-campus gives this a different flavor than what it originally had.
I think that makes sense, and I think that what sort of muddies the water a little bit is, and in cases of hybrid courses, sufficient access to campuses. Sounds like what we're really talking about is access to campus resources, sufficient access to campus resources to be successful in the particular program or course.
And I kind of like Patrick's suggestion that maybe we strike that from that fourth bullet and make explicit in the second bullet the students need to be informed of the specific dates and times they'll be expected to be on campus for a hybrid course.
I would agree.
Yes, sir.
And that's probably a more practical and reasonable point to make. But, Marshall, I saw it differently than what you're saying. I think it actually is stating, and again, I've got problems with the whole bullet and have for years, but just by putting the hybrid in there, what that meant to me was, no, you're not going to let someone who is in another continent or even thousands of miles away sign up for a hybrid course. Or not that you're not going to let them, but that you have some stated requirement, I guess, that to the same level that you guarantee their technical skills, you're not going to sign up a bunch of people 500 miles away for a hybrid course. Now, whether that's good or bad or can be policed or not is a separate issue, but that's the way I interpreted it.
But if you say you're going to do that, doesn't that kind of obligate you to check it in some way and block it in some way?
Well, that's always been the question on the other points, too, and I'm not aware of anyone who does, but it's always been there. It doesn't say necessarily that you will enforce your admission criteria. It just says,
yes, we have it. We ignore it, but
it just says you will have it. And that's kind of where we've all gotten away with it. We all have.
Is the intent that people have necessarily access to physical campus, or is it institutional resources that we're interested in? So if we substituted the word campus with institutional resources, would that not address the issue?
Well, if you remember, the definition of hybrid means that somewhere between 50% and 85% of the instruction takes place online, or I think of that going down the other ways. In other words, your students are going to be on campus, or else they break the definition. So if they're going to be on campus, then what this is saying in my mind was you've got to assess their ability to be on campus some. If you're letting them,
well,
then it's not a hybrid course.
Well, no. But what about those of us with off-campus teaching sites? So campus really means something different. I think maybe we should say access to face-to-face instruction. I mean, that gets at the same thing.
Well, I like Kingston's suggestion.
Off-campus and face-to-face.
Institutional resources is really key to student learning, not the buildings necessarily.
Well, keep in mind, too, if you read the definition by the letter,
right,
students don't necessarily have to be on campus for a hybrid course. That 15% also includes anywhere they have to show up, such as a test proctor. That's included in the definition. So in that case, if they could get a test proctor anywhere in the world, it'd still be a hybrid course if they're spending 15% of their time going to proctored activities, labs, field trips, or something where the student's required to be there. So I think the critical thing, we don't know what the students are going to do, but they do need to know up front if there is a face-to-face requirement for that course before they register. And from a systems perspective, just on our face-to-face courses, we have an issue with our systems in that we'll have some students register for, say, a Bryan campus, and then the next hour for a course on the Brenham campus, and it's an hour drive. And, you know, the only thing we can do with Banner is to flag them out and prevent them from registering any of those courses. So here it'd be even more difficult from a systems perspective to try to prevent them from being admitted or registering, because we don't really know what the face-to-face requirement's going to be.
Well, and, you know, again, back to my old gripe is the whole bullet is difficult to enforce. It might be better to strike the whole bullet and just add up to the second bullet, you know, some requirement to make it clearly known what, any campus attendance requirements are, rather than to say you've got these admission criteria and you're going to assess all this stuff. But that was a little beyond the purview of our charge, and so we haven't had deep discussions on that.
Yeah.
It was.
And see, we still have a handful of students who will call our help desk and they don't know what online means and didn't know they need a computer, and certainly didn't figure that out before registration because they're already in the course. And, so we're making a lot of efforts now to try to educate the students as they select their courses. This is an online course, and here's what that means. So, yeah, I'd be in favor of moving all that to more of a notification type bullet or something to let the students know up front.
Further discussion? It sounds like, let me offer this. Parsing the two issues, I think, is clear, right? So what we've, I think, heard is that in the second bullet, there needs to be some addressing of the students' requirements to be at a place at a certain time in a hybrid course. And that on the fourth bullet, which is, in my reading, far more about the technological readiness for a student to take an online course versus true admissions criteria.
As well as the academic readiness, because this really addresses the TSI requirements.
That's true. That's true.
Keep in mind, too, with the 15% option in the fully online courses, they could still have an orientation test or some other campus-type requirement.
And so maybe in that second bullet, since this is going to serve for both fully online and hybrid courses, in that second bullet, we add in any required physical meetings need to be noted, communicated to the student, period. Whether it's because by the state's definition, a fully online course can have a required orientation or a required proctored test.
I agree with that, Rob, because I think you need to leave that the way the original intent of that number 4 bullet should stay, and
in its original form.
Huh?
In its original form.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and then move the hybrid piece up for the physical location into the number 2.
Does that make sense? Randy, what are your thoughts?
I would agree with that. That makes much more sense. I still have a problem with
number 4.
With the fourth bullet. Required background and knowledge. We kind of hit that through transcripts or TSI, that kind of thing, but technical skills?
I think the intent of this bullet in the original principles was to do some sort of, are you ready for online assessment? The old easy, whatever that's called now.
Did they have access to a computer with
Right,
sufficient power?
right. Are you online? Those kind of things. I mean, I think that because remember, this was promulgating best practices for online, and this thing was originally drafted over 10 years ago. So that was a big issue there.
Well, and just if we understand that it's not saying you have to make
admissions criteria,
admissions decisions on
yes, agreed.
But it does say you've got admission criteria. Kind of leads us to think that if they take that, are you ready, and they said,
there was a point in time when some schools did. If you didn't have access, schools were trying to prevent students from saying, you accepted me and I don't have a computer, so you have to give me a computer. Right. And we went through that. I mean, I was here 10 years ago when we did this. And that was what it was aimed at very clearly, because we were all having that issue.
See, and currently at the small HBCUs, we're still having that issue.
Sure.
And we do, I know in our own criteria, we do ask those questions. That's how we assess our students, and then we tell them either yes, you can come in, or you need to meet these criteria prior to coming to the class.
And it's really, I think this bullet does need to get worked on, but I don't think we want to, we don't want to eliminate this point because this is a best practice issue, but in terms of clarity of that bullet, it is admissions/acceptance into a course or program, not necessarily institution, unless they're going into the institution solely on an online basis, right? I mean, this is really about the delivery modality, not about do you meet the acceptance criteria of the institution. Are you capable of engaging in this course in this alternate delivery mode?
But this is written for programs and courses. That's part of the challenge here.
Exactly.
I think it's it's.
That's right, and that's in the title.
Yeah.
So let me offer a comment that for this fourth bullet, if we roll it back to the original, that in the second bullet we do make explicit the need to communicate students any place-bound activities that are required for the course, and then acknowledging that the principles themselves may need a periodic review.
Rob, I'd like to propose an alternative.
Please.
To that. And rather than attaching that statement to the second bullet, I would propose that it be attached to the first bullet under students, which talks about program and course announcements, because we're talking about notification.
You're absolutely right. That's a much better place. Yeah. Would somebody care to be explicit in the suggested wording?
You could put program, and this would be attaching it to the first bullet.
Like program or course announcements, electronic catalog entries provide appropriate information regarding any required class meetings or face-to-face meetings required for successful completion of the program or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Rob, I have a question about what electronic catalog means in that first bullet. The way I'm reading that is a catalog, a codification of the degrees that are on your inventory to offer, not the schedule of classes, which you provide that detailed information that I think is probably more accurately covered in the second bullet. But that may be just the language that we use at our institution and maybe not the intent of this particular wording.
Agreed. There's always that confusion between catalog and schedule. Although it would not be, it would be correct in the catalog to note that it's a hybrid course. You would not be able to capture the specific dates and times in the catalog that you would in the schedule.
Catalogs typically don't indicate modality. It would just say, here is the outcomes of this particular coursework, but then scheduled classes would be, we offer it online, video conference, face-to-face.
This section is this section is that.
Maybe you just replace it with class schedule.
Yeah.
That's what we are, the nomenclature we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
Or just add course schedules. No need to replace it. You still want your catalog to provide correct information.
Does anybody in your catalog use modality?
We don't.
In the banner catalog, if the student clicks on it, it will show each course associated to that course description, and along with that, the modality.
But the modality wouldn't change the catalog description.
Well, it's like a tree, because the catalog drives it, and then the courses are listed under it with each modality or location. So that's the electronic catalog.
But the details about class meeting times, that kind of stuff would be in the schedule, not in the catalog.
Still shows there, but technically it had to come from a course entry rather than a catalog entry.
Right.
I think what Mark's talking about, and I haven't seen it, so just imagining that they have a database-driven system that pulls from the catalog, populates that in a schedule of classes, then has the detailed information about what's going to be offered in the upcoming semester. So you kind of have a blended approach to what a catalog and a schedule of classes is. Is that accurate?
Right. It combines it all into one as far as students are concerned. But certainly the detail attaches to the individual course section, not the course description. I think that's critical with what we're talking about.
So if we said program or course announcements and electronic catalog and course schedules should provide appropriate information, including any required class meeting times, something like that?
Well, you can get into the whole detail about what does course schedule mean.
Yeah.
I mean, some people call it calendar. If you mean a course schedule, then the class schedule is something that comes out every semester, and you don't really put that information in there.
That's true.
That information goes into syllabi.
I'd also avoid using class meeting because it might be a proctored activity. So the more generic we can make it.
So we know what we want to accomplish. We're searching for the right words.
Earlier.
You see how I just keep correcting things, not actually volunteering to put something up.
I noticed that.
Well,
you're a good editor.
Is the first bullet point really even necessary? Why not just strike the first bullet? And
I think to Antonio's point, it's the right place to say, to be very explicit, you need to communicate with the students.
Well, we're saying that in the second bullet, though.
Well, that's also true.
Students shall be provided with clear information. Instead of getting into, unless we specifically want to say you must show them a course catalog. If we feel strongly about that, then it deserves its own bullet. If we just want to say you must give them clear information about the course, then that's a more generic thing, and that looks like it's approached in bullet number 2.
I think that's more appropriate because we're even having a discussion about what is the schedule and what's a catalog.
Okay.
You'd used the phrase earlier when you were talking about specific meetings, and you'd use place-bound. So you use that as a more generic term.
Okay, so the current state of the discussion is that we're killing off the first bullet. But we're not going to kill 4. We're just going to leave 4 as is. We're not going to modify 4. All right, so we're killing 1, modifying 4, or not modifying 4, and adding into what will now be the first bullet. Specific language indicating that any place-bound activities be noted and communicated to the student.
And let me jump in here too and remind us that last time we didn't vote on whether we like the idea of a separate hybrid document or not, but there was discussion. I did mention these things briefly and what we had done, and that our committee had all agreed that more work could be done on this document. And as I remember, we were charged to go and talk more about that, which we have not yet done. So the discussions that we're having here, we could have more in depth in this subcommittee and bring back some recommendations like this. Although this is great fun and we're making good progress. we did.
That was very diplomatic.
We might be able to make it more efficient if
but less fun.
If the larger committee is, wants to put it off for a while. We're willing to do that. We just haven't done it yet.
Sense of the group?
That's good. Yeah. I wanted to throw one more thing out before I forget it and don't share it.
You realize you're volunteering to be on the subcommittee, right?
Well, I don't know. I was looking at our own requirements, and in our own requirements, students are made aware of required face-to-face and synchronous activities.
That's really good. I like that.
And that's not necessarily place-bound.
But it is time-bound.
Yes.
That's good.
Sure, you define synchronous somewhere for the students.
Yeah.
I bet the students get that part. I don't know about
All right, I'd entertain a motion that that this be taken back to the subcommittee for edits and revisions to the existing principles of good practice in lieu of a second principles of good practice, however you'd like to characterize that.
So moved.
Is that enough to go on? Do you
I'm getting there. Okay, who?
Roy.
Rob, one more nitty-gritty detail thing. We use the term placebound, and placebound kind of has a negative connotation. So we might want to come up with something slightly different from that. Just offer that up for the
I'm sure
for the
Randy's
committee.
able leadership will be able to handle that.
So does that sufficiently put to rest, we're not going to have a second
Yes.
separate document?
Is that the sense of the motion? You have some, just for fun, you want to read it back to us?
Yeah. Okay. That the principals document will be taken back to subcommittee for additional review.
And that is in lieu of a second principles specifically for hybrid. Is that too ugly? Can we vote on that? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. A few more discussion items, so the fun continues. Van, would you like to talk about our friends in the U.S. Department of Education?
All right. So I referenced this morning. I think everyone saw the April 20th Dear Colleague memo from Department of Ed that basically says that they're not going to start enforcing things until July 2014, as long as the institution is making good faith efforts to identify and obtain necessary state authorization before that date. And then they were finally explicit about what constitutes a good faith effort. Documentation that the institution is developing a distance education management process for tracking students' place of residence when engaged in distance education. Documentation that an institution has contacted the state directly to discuss programs the institution is providing to students in the state to determine whether authorization is needed. An application to a state even if it is not yet approved. Documentation from a state that an application is pending. And then they went on to make explicit again that if a state doesn't have any applicable regulations or laws, then there's no action needed on the part of the institution. They also went on to make it explicit that if a state is in the process of establishing new requirements, that the, and I'm going to read this here, institutions acting in good faith would be expected to seek authorization under the new requirements or procedures only after they were established. Now, I point this out because about 2 weeks ago, one of our general counsel and I traveled to Atlanta for an emergency SREB meeting, specifically to discuss a Southern Regional Education Board reciprocal arrangement regarding authorization to operate in states. And so this was I'm going to share with you what the gist of that conversation is and where that might take us and how that could impact your campuses. And this is just with those states that are part of SREB. So that's Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland and Rhode Island. So those are the states that are in play right now.
Rhode Island, Southern?
Yeah, Rhode Island's a part of SREB. I've never understood it either, but it's a part.
It's south of Massachusetts.
Just barely.
What we discussed was a reciprocal arrangement that would have some caveats to it. The first would be that we would be dealing with programs that are online only, that have no physical presence, and that would probably mean no practicum, no clinicals, no internships, no externships.
Dan, can I ask a question? Physical presence seems to be widely open to debate, and some states
Yeah.
are interpreting it to be if you advertise in their state, you've
That's
established
what we're
physical
getting to.
presence. Okay.
Right now, when we left, the tentative agreement was that if one of those southern states did define physical presence as advertising, you would still need to seek their approval. That was the tentative direction that we were heading. I think there's hopes that we might be able to get around that, but right now there's as many different definitions of physical presence as there are SREB members. What the other caveat that the working discussion had was that this would apply to those institutions that are a part of the electronic campus. Now, it didn't, what we tentatively, and this was all very tentative, what we discussed was that an institution would not necessarily have to have all of its programs in the electronic campus, but that if an institution had a program in the electronic campus and there were other online programs, then that would make the institution eligible to take advantage of the reciprocal arrangement. Okay? So what that means in the short run for many of you is that you might want to reconsider listing courses and programs with the electronic campus. SREB is in the process of doing a major revision of that should make it easier on the institution's end in terms of upkeep and importing course information and institutional information and not having to update that every semester, update all of it every semester. The other caveat is that this would only apply to public institutions. The independents and the proprietaries would not be covered under this arrangement that we're discussing. So it's a start. It's not ideal, and I recognize that it still doesn't get around that pesky issue of physical presence. What it does do is at least cover some of the programs and would cover some of the institutions if we're able to eventually agree on this and everyone sign off. The other challenge that we realized as we sat in Atlanta and tried to work through this, that we discovered is that there are some states within the SREB that to implement this would actually require state legislation. In Texas, we don't think that that'll be the case. We can handle it through a change to coordinating board rules, but there are some other states like Virginia, possibly Alabama and Georgia, that would actually have to go back to their legislatures in order to do this. The other thing that did sort of consistently come up in this was that discussion of physical presence and the fact that there are a lot of different definitions out there, and some of them do include things like advertising. We did not find a way around that yet. We might down the road. I think that there was a general consensus that one of the things that we needed to probably look at doing was trying to get some sort of an agreement on paper, and then we could work from there to expand it. SREB is going to be convening a smaller subcommittee that's going to work on the legal language that we'll hopefully be able to take back to each of the states later in the summer. The other thing that we did discuss too, though, was that for those programs and institutions that are covered under that 100% online, that this would also involve a waiver of any application costs or fees in those states. And the fee and application cost structure, as I know you guys are well aware of, really varies from state to state, with some states taking the route that we've taken, which is pretty much nothing, to other states having some very complicated and intricate calculations that charge fees based upon number of students, et cetera. So that's the direction that SREB is moving in. There is still an expectation that the SHIO group will be taking this up on a national level. Some of the other regions, like WCET and some of the other regional groups, are taking it up on their regional level, and that there's a possibility that down the road we might see in the next couple of years a move from the regional collaborations to more national collaborations. But that's where we are at this point with being able to potentially help out some of the public institutions. Yeah, Matt?
Two things. It's probably just me, but 8 years ago I heard a little bit about SREB, but I really haven't heard much recently. And it might be. Would it be appropriate, Van, for us at some point in the year next year to have a rep come and talk to us, for those of us that don't know much about the board? I mean, and once again, I'm probably the outlier. You guys probably are experts at it, and I'm not. But if they're moving in this direction, it'd be nice for us all to know a little bit more about them.
I'm sure that they would love to have that opportunity.
It's just kind of like the Russ Poulin thing last time. I thought it was really cool to bring him into video conference or audio conference. That was very helpful. Second thing is, are any of your institutions having a dialogue yet about operating policies and procedures or regent rules regarding? Because we're not, and at some point I think we're going to have to.
Regarding what?
Regarding what?
Okay.
Regarding what?
Regarding state authorization?
issues?
Yeah, state authorization.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely.
So do you have drafts or anything at this point?
We've just, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks and look at some decisions about which states. Now, of course, this would help. Arkansas right now is about $10,000 to go into.
Right.
We have 8 students there kind of accidentally.
Yeah.
And we have one here. We've got to make a decision unless we get some help like this on whether it is ever financially feasible for us to look at that state. And if it's not, then we need to not accept applications from that state.
Yeah.
And some of them, like Georgia's, 71 pages long and X number of thousands of dollars. You'd have to have hundreds of students in our CFO's view to make that worthwhile. So we're just assessing it state by state whether we've gotten approval. If we did not get approval, is it financially feasible to do so or desirable to do so? And if not, what process are we going to follow with our admissions about not accepting applications from that state?
There was, we had some discussion too about this came up about the feasibility that this question of economic feasibility that many institutions are facing. And although there was no consensus statement on it, I think the general opinion in the room was that states are going to need to think about teach-out provisions for institutions that have individuals already enrolled in programs in those states. What I would urge you to do as you begin to encounter that problem is to talk directly with the state about what provisions do we make for a teach-out provision. Some states appear to have thought that through a little bit more carefully and have a procedure in place. Some haven't, I think, thought that through quite yet. I know this was a conversation that we had. Alabama played I think Alabama actually has a pretty good process down if somebody needed to do a teach-out provision for them. So as you are going through this process and you do begin to unfortunately make those very difficult decisions about is it economically feasible, please make sure though that you're also working with the state, inquiring about what its teach-out process is and finding ways to at least get those students that you currently have enrolled out of the program without injuring them or injuring you. You look like you were going to say something, Rob.
I'm just curious if because obviously the only states that would need to be concerned about the teach-out provisions are the ones that have a relatively high hurdle.
Yes.
So Texas doesn't need to do that.
No.
We're easy to deal with. I'm curious, though, at the SREB meeting, if any of the representatives from the high hurdle states were defensive in any way about the conversations ongoing, and were they, you know, I'm curious about the ability for the SREB states to coalesce around this and move forward. Given that a couple of them are.
There was a little defensiveness.
Yeah.
There was also, I think, a little bit of incredulousness at how seemingly lax Texas is in our approach. I think my personal take on that is that one of the things that's at work is that Texas is not approaching this as a state. We're not approaching this from a position of we're approaching it from a position of excess. We have more students who are in need of education than probably every institution in the state could handle working at full capacity.
Right.
And we have a young population that's growing.
Yep.
And so we've got a large college-age population now, and demographics indicate we'll have an even bigger college-age population in another 5 or 10 years. That growth pattern is not the same demographic growth pattern that many of the other SREB states are experiencing right now.
So they're more protectionist.
And I think that there is, I think some of them probably are approaching it from a position of scarcity and protection, and that there was a bit of defensiveness about that. Like I said, I think we've probably found a way to at least get around it for some institutions, but it's not going to, unfortunately, work for everyone right now. And we're still a ways away from inking this agreement.
Okay.
I think right now Bruce Chalot is the person that's leading it at SREB, and I think Bruce right now is hoping that we might start back in on it with a smaller group in the next few weeks and have something towards the end of the summer. But it's going to take quite a bit more work, and it's also going to take on the part of everyone, and then it's also going to take quite a bit more work for some of the states to go back and get legislation passed in order to do it. We also, raised the issue that not every SREB state might decide that they want to sign on, but that they would need to understand that by not signing on, then that means that their institutions will not have the benefits of it either. And I think that the general sense around the room was that probably all of the states were interested in trying to find something that could work at least on the most basic levels.
Got 3 really hard states. I'm just interested to know if they were in the conversation. It's Tennessee.
Tennessee was there, and Tennessee was a little defensive.
And Georgia.
Georgia was there, and what was the second? Arkansas. Yes,
Georgia.
They were all there. Arkansas was quiet. Tennessee and Georgia were somewhat vocal. And with Tennessee, the issue of how they're defining physical presence as advertising came up. And the irony came up as well that, in the case of Tennessee, if you don't have any face-to-face coursework and you don't actually advertise in the state, but you still somehow have 5,000 students, you're exempt. It's only if you actually advertise in the state, even if you only have 5 students from that advertising, that you come under the Tennessee Board of Higher Education's authority. And that irony was discussed.
And what do they consider advertising?
Billboard.
If you have something in a national magazine that happens to get delivered there.
Targeted. For them, it's targeted.
Of that state.
So, billboard, advertising
your Google
in the
SEO
state.
stuff, if that's how you're drawing them in, then you're fine.
Yeah. So it's there is a ways to go in all of this. We have 3 years to try to work something out. I think that you may find now that there may be some more states that originally had policies in place that may be going back and revisiting those policies.
Now, Illinois has just gone back and revisited theirs and gotten much more stringent.
Unfortunately, I think that may happen.
They've demanded that any degree be taught 50% face-to-face indoor study.
What is this, all of a sudden we
Illinois.
see the possibility of money?
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it might be it.
What if you buy a billboard just
On the state line.
500 feet from the state line, surrounding the state, so anybody going in there sees
You
it?
probably would be okay, Randy.
Sure.
Say, Arkansas, look at this.
Yeah, no, you could, because I'm not advertising in your state. I'm advertising in.
No, but it's directed to residents.
Skywriting, that's targeted though.
Yeah, that would be targeted. Obviously, we have a ways to go on this, but I did want you guys to know that we have started talking about some reciprocal arrangements. This may not preclude us as a state from trying to see some other reciprocal arrangements created. I know as the person who still gets every single email, letter, and phone call for the state of Texas that the pace actually has not diminished at all since the April Dear Colleagues memo. It's actually been an uptick in it, and I think that that's because, and I'm curious to hear if this is what's happening with y'all. What I'm being told by institutions is that their general counsels have read that Dear Colleagues memo as saying that you have to actively be making a good faith effort right now. So has that been the read that y'all have had as well?
Yeah. It's just the punishment is postponed.
It's just
That's
that,
correct.
right.
But they reserve the right to punish you in the interim.
Van, I'm not familiar with the acronym that you were using. Could I have the full name of the agencies?
Yes, it's the Southern Regional Education Board.
Van, I don't want to curtail discussion on this point.
No.
But just want to say thank you for your leadership in this area and your representation of Texas in dealing with these type of reciprocal things, incredibly important work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Also wanted to acknowledge Rissa Potter and her efforts
Yes.
in getting the word out to folks and ask if there, she may be already planning to do this, but if there's some way we can make sure the details you shared with us about the planning towards these reciprocal agreements, even though it's very tentative, to those folks who aren't represented around the table.
Risa is adamantly nodding her head in the background.
Very good.
I've seen the notes that she sends out to institutions after these meetings, so I'm sure it's going to be in there.
Because
And your comments are welcome as well.
Mhm.
Please, just email me your suggestions, your suggested documents. I think it's very important that we share what we can.
I think that is very important right now, is that we're sharing. I have to say, I was when SREB called this meeting, it was about a week before the April 20th revision, and they informed us that they were recommending that we bring 2 individuals. They had all of the state directors for the electronic campus, which was why I was there. And then they actually suggested that we bring legal counsel. And so it was an experience for me to sit in a room full of lawyers and on more than one occasion have our lawyer next to me and say, I'm going to defer to legal counsel on that. And Bruce was on his best behavior with that many lawyers around.
I would imagine so.
So did want to give you an idea of what was going on there. The other piece that I think hasn't really gotten talked about, but that will, it sounds like, be coming up more and more, is that states are tasked to have very clear and coherent and explicit complaint processes. And the board, the Department of Ed had some very definite things to say about what constitutes a complaint process and what doesn't. I think many states, whenever they've received student complaints, have tended to tell the student to go back and work within your own system. That's oftentimes what we do. It's questionable now whether or not the Department of Education sees that as a viable complaint process. So the other thing that we may see as a result of all of this is we will have to formulate a more formal process by which we as a state and an agency handle student complaints, and that will impact all of you whether you're a public institution or not. I think many other states are going to have to do that as well. So you might sort of be aware that down the road, you may start seeing some processes, even here for your own students that find our numbers and call and complain to us, that there's a different process by which we have to operate. So that is where we are right now. What we're continuing to do is everything that comes out of the Department of Ed, we are putting up on our website on the Distance Ed page. There's a section that's got Russ's presentation up from last meeting, as well as the video of his presentation, the PowerPoint. It's got a link to the rules up. It's got the first Dear Colleague memo that came out in March. It's got the second one up as well. So we're trying to at least keep, and it has a link to the the WCET Witchy site. So we're trying to at least, keep things updated on our end if you need to grab those materials. And I know that Risa's group and some others are working on some things too.
And I echo Patrick's comment. I applaud your efforts on this, that this is clearly an area where the coordinating board and your leadership are critical to the health and well-being of the institutions in the state of Texas. This is a non-trivial deal.
And I would ask that as you make your good faith efforts, when you do run into problems, because unfortunately you will, that you please let me know, particularly if you find that there are certain states that it really just doesn't seem that it's going to be feasible for you. Again, that's information that we at least can have internally and can share with the commissioner for when conversations begin to take place within the SHIO organization.
So we're going to blow up Arkansas, Tennessee, and Georgia?
I did not say that. We are being webcast. You're going to get trouble, Claudia.
We won't blow them up. We'll just simply toilet paper them.
It's not an exclusive list. There are others.
Just a bit of trivia. I think the northernmost member is not Rhode Island, it's Delaware.
Delaware, thank you, Delaware. I knew that I missed something.
The born researcher.
Thank you, Delaware. Which still to me doesn't seem like it's south, but...
Yeah, I don't think it is.
It's one of those original 13 colonies.
Route for Diacela.
Diacela, that's right.
Delaware, who knew?
All right, let's move on to our next item, which on the agenda is titled Discussion of Development and Use of Collaboration in Distance Education. Van, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on that as we morph that discussion a little bit.
All right. This item came up because, as some of you may know, the State Auditor's Office is engaged in a audit of distance education at universities in the state. What this has meant up till now has been that I've been dealing with them. What this probably means within the next month or so is that some of you may be dealing with them because they're going to do a spot audit of a set of universities.
State auditor.
State Auditor's Office. Community colleges kind of have a pass right now. They're looking at the universities first. It's been structured really as an informational audit. It's been really an attempt for them, I think, to get their hands around what distance education is. I think that they are, like all auditors, very interested in the risk management aspects of it. Primarily, we've been doing a lot of education on our end, talking to them and walking them through what our distance education policies are. One of the questions, though, that came up from them, and one of the concerns that they raised was that they were interested in knowing which institutions, in this case universities, which universities were involved in collaborative distance education arrangements. And that was about as specific as they were. As we talked through it, what they were really interested in was looking at institutions that are in partnerships either with other public or private institutions or with third parties, whether that's in terms of assisting with the delivery and management of distance education, or in the case of interinstitutional collaborations within a system, looking at the sharing of courses and the ability of students to enroll at different institutions. So, and they very explicitly asked, do you have criteria for this? And you know, my response was, no, we don't. It's not come up before. That triggered, though, a conversation with Rob about, do we need to, and Bhagya about, do we need to start thinking about, and at least raise with this group, whether or not it is worth us having a set of principles of good practice for collaborative arrangements, much like we have a set of principles of good practice for online and hybrid education. That has since morphed into another conversation about the need to have a better sense of exactly what is going on in distance education in Texas. You know, we have a very good directory and listing of what our distance ed programs are, degree and certificate programs in the state. I'd actually peg our accuracy level there pretty high, largely because, you know, Gay went out and resurveyed everyone at the beginning of the year. So I think we're probably around 95, 98% accurate there. But there's some other pieces that we don't necessarily have the best handle on when we start looking at student information systems, when we start looking at what the learning management systems are, what are the infrastructure issues that make it either easier or more difficult for students to transfer credit, for students to be retained and to, you know, successfully go on and complete their degree. This sort of larger conversation also came up because of the work that y'all did on the white paper. Because as we began to talk about it internally, one of the things that came up was, you know, it was a great piece that responded to the cost efficiency study and did it fairly quickly, given a very limited amount of time, but it raised and it mirrored a lot of the discussions that we've had internally, particularly about the need to work on ways to, with student transfer and success and retention and articulation. But we're at the point where we need to move beyond the generalities of saying that we need to work on these issues to the nuts and bolts of what do they look like and what do we specifically need to do to make some changes. So having said that, there is a request of this committee that I'm going to let Rob tell you about.
The discussion was about, can the DEAC take the lead and do a broad-based survey of institutions in the state regarding all of our online and distance activities, as well as some of these sort of infrastructure factors. And my gut was to push back on that and assert that some significant portion of that data is in existence right now through our CBM reports, perhaps through participation in EDGCAUSE core data survey, that there are silos of this data, and rather than create a new original source document, that we approach it from a standpoint of reviewing existing data sources and identifying the gaps. And in that process be driven by asking the coordinating board what questions they're seeking to answer. And then we can assess the adequacy of the existing data. And the hope was that we could form a small group to engage that conversation with the coordinating board and begin the assessment of what are the data sources, what is our confidence in the accuracy of those data sources, and identifying gaps, and then figure out the right way to address those gaps.
And from our perspective, we also very much, and this was a conversation that McGregor and I had yesterday, we very much also, in terms of framing the question of what sort of information do we need for that sort of comprehensive overview, we really would like to turn to you to get input of what you think that we need as well. And to place this in a little bit of a broader perspective, we'd like to have something so that as we look ahead to the 2013 legislative session, we will be positioned if we need to make recommendations, if we need to build things into our LAR, that we can begin to do that. And right now, I think there's a sense that we're missing that sort of analysis. And particularly when and what the conversation for us that kept coming back to yesterday was, what are the obstacles that are in a student's way? And some of those are institutional and organizational obstacles that we assume just are going to be obstacles, like student information systems that don't communicate, even sometimes within the institution, let alone between institutions, even in the same system. Are there things that we need to do as a state to really seriously look at how we fix that? So this is, I think, the beginnings of making sure that we've got the groundwork for making very specific recommendations about very tangible things that can be done to deal with infrastructure issues that may impact the ability of students to seamlessly transfer and easily transfer, as well as begin to look at what are the trends in terms of the popularity of certain courses that are offered online. What are the trends in terms of the popularity of certain programs that are offered online, and can we begin to do some need gap analysis so that we begin to look at, are there certain, are we covering all of the core curriculum with adequate online course options? Or are there portions of even the core that we may need to look at in terms of saying, if we want students to begin to be able to access their core curriculum in an online fashion, here's the gaps that we need to look at having institutions address. So those are sort of the larger meta questions that we see this as setting the stage for. But those aren't questions that we can really grapple with yet until there is a better sense of exactly what's going on, and now really going beyond just the programs, but getting into the nuts and the bolts.
Is there capacity in programs that we can leverage out across the state?
Is there capacity in programs that we can leverage across the state? Are there programs that would have a high student popularity that don't exist yet? Are there problems that are preventing those from existing? I know in the case of accounting, here's one that would probably be a very good option for an online program. It certainly fits with the analysis that we did in the Community College Baccalaureate Report, where that shows as one of the statewide needs in terms of growth and jobs, yet there are rules that the state agency that certifies accountants has that prevents the entire program from being offered online. So it's those other sort of structural problems that we need to get a sense of, but we can't do that until we know what the programs are that we need to look at, and what other challenges there may be that are in a very infrastructure, nuts and bolts way that impacts things as well.
Questions, discussion? Is that a task that the DEAC would like to take on? Is that a reasonable goal for our work plan for the next year? Are there people who are interested?
Not the next month.
No.
That this is sort of the interim set of activities leading up to the next legislative session that we distill a set of operational questions, that we assess the adequacy of the existing data and identify the gaps and try to answer those questions.
Yeah, to me, what I'm hearing is it's more a strategic intent at this
Correct.
point, instead of.
This is very much a strategic intent. Yes.
What is our strategic intent as DEAC?
Yes.
To facilitate these larger questions amongst the state. without committing to that, yes, we'll do the heavy lifting without resources, blah, blah, blah. And dealing with a staff time that's really overcommitted with other activities as well.
Absolutely.
In defense of the higher ed coordinating staff, board staff.
Yep.
But I think it's a worthy thing for the group to look at. It's a worthy intent. It would be a worthy effort.
It's a tremendous effort, really. I mean, you look at it just from a single perspective. It's you have to assess institutional readiness priorities, infrastructures. You have to go out and assess students, have students participate in this giant surveys to see what exactly works. So there was a national study already done which looked at the most popular courses students took online, or what was the most popular ones they took for transferring credits, right?
Right.
I think they identified stuff like history and political science or something that everybody takes apparently. So.
Right.
Except for us lucky foreigners. We don't take anything. But
there's going to be a quiz on Texas history.
I can take that quiz actually and pass it.
You just think that defense is going to be about geology.
That's right.
I do agree. I think that's a worthwhile effort for us. I think it does fit into our scope of what we do on the whole.
I think some of the most needed programs and courses are those that are the most difficult to put online. I'm thinking of STEM.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so maybe actually pinpointing that is a problem.
Identifying the need.
That
That's
point
right.
might be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I think, what we want to be able to get at. And related to that is then being able to think about how can we best leverage the resources that we have. As we see the Texas Learning Objects Repository come online and expand, if we see that those are issues, then maybe we need to look at trying to make sure that we get STEM digital learning objects in there sooner rather than later, and being more strategic. We know that we are going to be dealing with a period for the foreseeable future where budgets are going to be tight and we're going to be called upon to do more with less, but that means then being very focused in what we do so that we can get the best bang for our buck. And this seems to also, I think, and I'll let Rob talk more about it, but I think it also fits in with, as we were talking about yesterday, with some national trends in terms of really doing hard data mining and data analysis as a way of driving institutional and system decisions.
I think in the largest sense, what we represent around this table is now fully mainstreamed. That wasn't the case when most of us started in this field, right? We're now fully mainstreamed, and we've got to get beyond we've got to get to the place where our arguments are backed with data, and sources of data that are unimpeachable, rather than some of the stuff that I've been responsible for in the past. You can make it say whatever you want to. So I think as the DEAC moves into the next couple of years, getting ready for the run-up to the next legislative session, as this one winds down, it's clear we are being looked at as a key to a number of knotty problems in the state. We need to be able to strongly say, yes, we can do that, and strongly say, no, we can't do that. And I think the way that we can empower those decision points is through having a significant store of actionable data. So from my standpoint, I think this is an area that we need to delve into. Matt's point is really well taken, that we focus this discussions at the strategic level as we scope the work, not that we will be engaging the work. This is a volunteer advisory board, and coordinating board staff is already oversubscribed. So let us figure out how we accomplish the task, but first let us scope the task out. Thoughts?
think if we can get a clear set of outcomes that are desired.
Agreed. Consistent metrics across the state would be useful. I mean, even now with the data that is reported back to us, that we report to the coordinating board, when we see it come back on the CBM reports, we frequently go, no, that's not right. Let's figure out what that process is, what's broken in that process. Let us attempt anyway to go one step deeper than simply regurgitating what we've given to the coordinating board.
And I think certainly in developing the Grad Texas initiative, we have 8 institutions. Among those 8 institutions are represented, I think, 5 different student information systems. 2 institutions are in the same system, and they both have different student information systems.
Yep.
So we have, again, if we're going to place the student in the center, and that's very much our desire here, and that was something that McGregor and I spoke at great lengths about yesterday morning. If we're going to place the student at the center, if we are truly going to be a student-centered education, then we have to look at what makes it difficult for students, because none of us have traditional students anymore. They all whirl around, and it's not like it was for probably most of us. But the sense is that our infrastructures may not have kept pace with the times, and not only does that create immense frustration and heartache on your part, but it creates immense frustration and heartache on the part of students.
Yes, they are frustrated. All right, so assuming that we agree that this is a rational activity, can I see a show of hands of anybody who would be interested in the first stages of the conversation, that being a subcommittee where we will lay out just some questions and some approaches? Hands?
I'll do it.
All right. So I see Sune and Paula.
Marshall.
I see Amy and Marshall and Matt. Anybody else? Some people sitting on their hands.
They get the next phase.
Yeah, that's right. They get their real work. All right, that's a good group. I appreciate that. We will. I'll corral the group in the next couple
That was
weeks.
my next question.
Yes, I will do that. I'm not saying I'm going to lead the group, but I'll start it. Okay. That's good. And one of the things that I think that group will do, one of the first things we'll do is probably like to have a conference call, include you, perhaps Mac, and try to codify the questions that we're going to attempt to answer. All right? All right. Are there any other issues for the day? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
That was a little slower than I thought it was. All right. All in favor? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all very much.
Good meeting.
And you might want to turn off your mic.